celebrations held on Gandhi's birth anniversaries as well as death anniversaries. Gandhi's last words, "Hey Ram," are inscribed on the marble, which is always adorned with flowers. And now, US President standing by, a symbolic gesture of planting a tree, filling in sand, the drums, thus planting a tree in the premises of Rajghat. He joins several dignitaries by doing that, because trees labelled near the platform within the complex were planted in the past as well by various dignitaries, including his predecessor and former US President Dwight Eisenhower. There's a Gandhi Peace Garden in New York that was inaugurated when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in New York, that has the trees that symbolize the 50 different states of the United States. This is extremely important considering that Mahatma Gandhi had the lowest ever carbon footprint. His was a life full of simplicity. He adorned a simple dhoti and believed in respecting Mother Nature, not exploiting it at all. And that is why planting a tree is a mark of honor for Mahatma Gandhi. You're looking at drums engrossed in a conversation with Union Minister Hardeep Puri. Perhaps Donald Trump would be asking him about the history of Rajghat, the life and philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi, and the relevance of Gandhi's life and philosophy in contemporary times. The world needs the principles and values of Mahatma Gandhi today more than ever before, considering the conflict situations that have emerged in the recent past between different regions of the world, the growing challenge of extremism and terrorism. As the world unites, as India and the United States unite in the fight against radical terrorism and extremism, these principles that Mahatma Gandhi stood for, the values that he lived by, become extremely significant. Mahatma Gandhi's role in India's freedom struggle cannot be overemphasized. He led the freedom struggle that connected the whole of India, from South India to North India, Central India, Western India, Eastern India. There were several movements that Mahatma Gandhi spearheaded. He joined the Vaikom Satyagraha in Kerala that had a lot of impact on the social life in South India. Besides that, the time that he spent in Ahmedabad and Gandhinagar also shaped the Indian independence struggle. We've seen the trams now moving out of the Rajghat complex after laying the wreath in honor of Mahatma Gandhi and planting a tree in honor of India's father of the nation. So, Professor Vijayalakshmi, we're talking about how important Gandhian values and principles are in contemporary times.
Well, yes, but I have also mentioned earlier, Munmun, that the message that Gandhiji brings is also relevant to this generation of young people who are waking up to modern India and modern world that they live in. But in particular, the Americans, especially the civil rights movement and those who are connected with it, and those who have, in fact, the grandson of Martin Luther King visited India and had been very, very clear about how impactful Gandhiji's message was. So I think both in terms of inspiration and aspiration, a Gandhian philosophy still holds a huge message for the humanity. And it also appeals as a socially integrating force in terms of becoming, as you mentioned, simple, living with nature. And I think largely you're seeing smaller movements in the world today that are going towards organic farming, organic food, living with, not exploiting nature, using resources. A little should go a long way. All these philosophies are seemingly resonant with not just, people who sit and think about these things, but who are also young people whom you're seeing a large thing. And another thing is, because of the technology we have today and the kind of Twitter and social media that has taken over communications in such a mass and rapid way, you have these ideas also becoming again, a kind of robustness has come back into the thought processes of people in terms of accommodating Gandhian philosophy into daily life. And I think simplicity, inspiration and aspiration, all the three words describe India. It's not only India who's fascinated and continues to be inspired by Gandhiji, but I think a larger message for the world.
Absolutely. And now we are also expecting a lot of formal engagements in terms of substance and outcomes to play out at Hyderabad House once the agreements are signed and exchanged and press statements take place and a joint statement is issued. There's sure
manner in which the ceremonial welcome takes place, the president's bodyguard all lined up there. And tonight will be the state dinner as well at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. So today the US President and Prime Minister Modi will aim to expand the Indo-US global partnership as they hold extensive talks. And it's something that President Trump referred to yesterday, the deals that they will be selling state-of-the-art military helicopters and
काम क्या करते हो सुंदर?
जी मेरी टेलरिंग की दुकान है।
दर्जी, मेरी बेटी की शादी किसी प्रोफेशनल से होगी। शादी की तारीख फिक्स करें।
प्रिंट करो, प्रोफेशनल बनो, vistaprint.in.
And being carried on Doordarshan's network through Doordarshan to various other channels and across the globe.
Well, on the trade front, the conversation today will be taken forward as we beam you these live visuals. There you have Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in fact, according welcome to President Donald Trump and First Lady. Well, these are first visuals on your channel, on your screen, Doordarshan screen, arriving at Hyderabad House, and that is what actually kickstarts the hard talk part of it, the real diplomacy, and we'll have to see. Well, both sides have reiterated there are lots of issues which are on the common page, but on the trade front, there are certain sticky issues. Finally, what we get to see is at the end of the day, the final outcome. Your thoughts as we stay with these live visuals.
Well, you know, Shakal, one of the things that one always waits for is when you walk the talk. And this is literally, as we see the
What do you make
visuals.
of this walk?
Well, they're walking the talk that they've been the conversation which had started some time ago but was on dazzling display yesterday. Today you're seeing, as you can see, both leaders in deep thoughts and are also able to, you know, figure out what exactly is it that the outcomes should reflect. But, you know, to go back a little bit, I would say that it is important to understand that both countries need each other in many ways, though we understand the asymmetry, and, you know, there are enough pundits and experts who will tell you, oh, this is a, you know, we are the 9th trading partner, and, you know, all sorts of figures and statistics are given to you to show you how the real world and the real people look at this relationship. But I think for two countries engaging in global policies and global presence, I think it's very important not only to need each other but to like each other. And I think we've come a long way. When there used to be a number of irritants that used to be the only way to describe the relationship. There used to be poverty, there used to be private sector, there used to be Pakistan, there used to be proliferation. You know, if you want to go through the alphabetical soup of irritants, there are plenty available.
But all that is thing of past now.
That's right.
Most of it or all of it?
Most of it, and all of it, in fact, and all of those. So I would say today, so it's not only necessary to be relevant to each other, to need each other, but it's also good to like each other. And I think that's what you're saying. That's one thought.
Yes.
The other part of it is also about a local versus global synchronization that you're seeing. Now, trade brings that into great relief. We've been discussing since yesterday on how we are trying to align regional, bilateral and global interests and perspectives between India and the United States. But I think it's more also important to realize that local economies and local interests are now affecting the way foreign policies are being conducted, both in the United States and in the in India. And if you look at some of the recent research done in the United States, the role of the middle class, for example, how do they see their president serving their interests through foreign policy has become a very major point of focus. So today, local economies are devising formulas and, you know, a sort of policy level also, you know, there is a kind of alignment that they are trying to see with the global markets and so on. So I think these are important aspects that one tends to forget when we talk about a bilateral trade deal or just a trade deal for the sake of a deal. So there will be much more than that.
Does foreign policy play such a big role in a U.S. election, you know, in terms of the local voter in the U.S.? Does it really affect them that much, or they look at you know, issues that would affect them locally?
No, I think, Mark, that's a very good question. And substantively, there's new research that indicates that economic prosperity has become the undergirding principle of US foreign policy. And there are enough indications to tell you again the role of the middle class and the role of local economies are being partly driving American approach to economic policy towards the other countries. And therefore, you see, for example, the loss of a US dairy organization can have very significant impact in Indo-US deliberations on the dairy products trade. So that sort of explains in many ways it's not only about lobbying by pharma companies on medical stands or dairy organizations on dairy products, it's also about connecting the sale of a particular product to another country through foreign policy. So trade is also a two-way street, Mark, and therefore what you give and what you expect in return has to be mutually convincing, comprehensive, and so on. But at the end of the day, we need to wait before we speculate any further, because obviously once you get to see the actuals on the ground and see how much they have been able to actually accommodate each other or come together, that would indeed be the proof of the pudding.
So the US President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi now on the lawns of the Hyderabad house, and this is a photo opportunity, and we can see this is actually one of the newer photo opportunities. We usually see them on the corridors, but this is on the lawns. So this is this is in fact for the first time that I'm seeing it. So this is something new, in my opinion.
Well, a brief photo op, followed by a very, very firm handshake. And here we can see both leaders mean business. Trump means business. It's clear from the fact that a very high-powered delegation, which includes Commerce Secretary, Energy Secretary, Acting Chief of Staff, and also their NSA, are accompanying him. And global and regional issues like we've been talking about, which also include situation in Afghanistan, will come up for discussion. Will there again be a reference to Pakistan, direct or indirect? We'll have to see. And that is something which is also a very newsworthy point here, Professor Vijay Lakshmi. We've spoken very extensively on trade. But I wanted to ask you, since you picked up the electoral angle point, well, many analysts and experts do feel that he's here. It's also important for him to shore up his political capital back home. When I say that, I mean the Gujarati as first language and the Indian Americans there, particularly in LA, Silicon Valley, Atlanta, Tampa, Seattle, Miami. Traditionally, like even Chicago and Houston, they have considerable number of Indian Americans there. For him, that means a lot, and part of the outreach yesterday had something to do with that as well.
Well, yes and no, in the sense that, American elections, presidential elections, are not just about popular voting, but it's also about electoral college that plays on in what is termed as the battleground states. And Texas is one of those states today, because 400,000 Indians make it call it their home, and more than 300,000, at least 300,000 of them are probably voters. And so to gain any electoral advantage is always part of any political calculus of any politician, and I think that's normal. And the other states are, Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida, you mentioned Tampa, and these are all the states in which electoral Pennsylvania, there have been, the past electoral results did indicate a very small sliver of majority, and therefore to make this inroad as partly also being able to benefit from it would be, I think, part of the thinking. But I think on the issue of India-US, it's also Indian side, we have been facing a number of, I'm not going back to the trade part of it, but India's economic slowdown has also been seen as part of, India's global outreach to convince the sentiments, the business sentiment that it is good to do business with India. And Trump coming to India has also elevated that sentiment in some ways, because it also, sort of puts across the feeling that there is a, we can do business here. So I think this has benefited India as well. So, if you talk about just political and just economic. It may not really explain things to us.
The timings of it just be coincidental for Donald Trump.
It can be, and it's also a long way away, a lot of imponderables.
Yes,
There are
yes.
50 states in the United States. So I know, the aggregate of Indian, the impact is 1%. So let's be very clear that we are not really over-inflating a lot of the things. But every political party and a politician has to be calculating and let's say accommodating a number of factors that could come into play once an electoral campaign or a contest begins. So it's clear that these are, but Indian Americans are very important.
Right.
They seem to play a very, very significant role, given the fact that whenever Prime Minister Modi has gone there, he has been able to get a very wide reception. And of course, I have to mention this, that there is a bipartisan support for Indo-US ties and for improving Indo-US ties. So I don't really think that this limits itself. See, there are many frameworks in which you can study the incentive argument, whether
Indeed.
Trump as a acquitted future electoral candidate, Indo-US ties and that framework. So there are many frameworks which can explain incentives to analyzing such a visit. But I think by and large it's been mutually beneficial, and they need to think about how this mutual recognition of mutuality in a shared future can actually play out in hard negotiated agreements, and the real issue will come out once we see the actual figures in terms of also in the coming months how much business investment is coming in and what kind of agreements have facilitated Indian trade requirements, because we also want to send
But very
mangoes
quickly,
and
before I hand it over to Mark, do you see there is a desire, a free-flowing desire, both sides when it comes to trade and investment? You see?
Yeah, but India wants FDI, as was many have discussed. FII is not so interesting to India as FDI, and FDI really has a role to play, because now this is again sounding very abstract, but it has impacted India's standing in the world. So if India wants to be seen as a serious economic player as well as a globally viable and strategic country, you need to have investment flowing in.
Yes, indeed.
And I think that's really the issue here.
our interests in the Indo-Pacific with those in the Indian Ocean region. And I think the United States has modified its stance by saying that the Indo-Pacific extends all the way to the coast of Africa.
Yes.
But India still has to moderate because we share a long land border with China, but at the same time we cannot ignore our interests in the Pacific because this is where a lot of our trading partners stay, and we cannot have a global order which is not rules based.
That's right.
So I think that is in India's interest, and the Quad which is moving forward, we need to be less diffident on that. We need to put our weight behind it because that is a very important mechanism for signaling.
So, but all these
also when it comes to the defense ties, I think India deliberately chose to diversify its requirements and its purchases. I wish we could have done or invested more heavily on R&D, but that unfortunately has not happened. And today when a country aspires to be a global player, and with its obsolete defense equipment, you need modern equipment, you need modern weapons, and the erstwhile USSR, Russia is doing a lot. We are still dependent on military platforms. 70% of our military platforms is still based on the Soviet era. We are getting the spares from Russia, but at the same time we need to diversify.
Yes, indeed.
And so technologically, I think it is the United States which would be able to give us what we really seek, and the government to government, business to business model can only work with the United States as two democracies.
Right.
With Russia,
Yes.
it's going to be a G to G model, and India has in fact moved away from the G to G model. So we will get Akula class submarines and the nuclear. So we need to diversify, and here we have to the United States and some of the European countries would become critical, like we've done the Rafale deal with France. So to say that we should put all our eggs in one basket, I think in a globalized world with globalized requirements on many fronts, we need to diversify our requirements.
So we need to diversify, and there are certain areas or domains where we would need United States cooperation as much as they would need us. But then, how will this be impacting the other, emerging democracies or developed world? I would specifically want to know from you. It would really matter to China, to Russia, because these are the two countries who will be keenly watching how today specifically pans out in terms of outcomes. Isn't it?
In this respect, I would say it is Russia's sensitivities which we have to keep in mind, not more, because with China we do not do any defense deals, we do not do defense purchases. With China, it is more an economic engagement. We don't do anything strategic with China. When it comes to Russia, we are doing, we are balancing our requirements both between the United States and Russia. And I think the biggest challenge was when we overcame US pressure on not signing the S-400 deal with Russia. We've gone ahead and explained to the United States why it is important for us, and the US somehow has accepted the Indian viewpoint. We have not come under the kind of pressure Turkey has come under, and nor has the United States said that they would not do any military business with India. So the Comcasa was signed, and we are hoping that we would manage. So I think India has shown that it can compartmentalize its relations with our two big strategic partners, Russia and the United States, and we will continue to balance. And coming to your question of trade, I think this is where the two leaders would really need to have a very serious conversation today, because when it comes to agriculture and dairy, I've been writing about it since 2008. We really cannot give in anymore. The US needs to be sensitized that 50% of India's workforce is still dependent on agriculture, and these are marginalized small farmers. You hear of farmer distress, farmer suicides, and the subsidy which goes is minimal compared to what the US pays to its own farmers. In the US, the agriculture contributes only about 2% of the American GDP. In India, it is 18% of our GDP which comes from the agriculture sector. And 32 million people in the United States are dependent on agriculture. In India, it's about 245 million. So see the huge
So the
disparity.
US also subsidizes their farmers heavily, is what you're saying.
Very heavily, and
And that's against the WTO guidelines in any
yes,
case. So
they continue to
yeah,
flout. So I think
that's right.
this is where Lighthizer is not going to relent, but
Right.
maybe Trump
Sure.
and Prime Minister Modi need to have a one-on-one on this, and it
All right.
needs to be explained
Sure.
as to why. And let not agriculture and dairy become such a major part of trade when we are moving ahead on a number of other areas like energy, defense, and we need to look at the overall
So
basket.
there is a scope to move
Sure.
on incrementally
Right.
in trade space.
No,
There is, but
True.
I think we need to have a dialogue and explain.
We'll have to see
Okay.
what comes out
I'd
of the trade deal
I'd like
today,
to
the
take you
large
up on
trade
another
deal that
issue
you
that
said.
you did raise, ma'am, about the Quad and these other issues with the Indo-Pacific. India's engagement in these areas, is not at the cost of anybody else. It is actually to enforce rules. I mean, to enforce a rules-based process. And is there enough convergence, you think, with the other countries that are involved to see that, a rules-based approach is and it's not hegemonistic in any way?
Absolutely, I would agree with you, because this is not hegemonistic in any way, because this
From
is
our point of view, but from the others as well, whom we are cooperating with.
See, I think the others we are cooperating are all democracies.
That's right.
And when you have a confluence or a meeting of democracies, I think hegemonistic tendencies do not come into the foreplay. US is the one which is seen as the hegemon by the other big players like Russia and China. And I think the US, India has been able to explain to our interlocutors that we play by the rules. We do not look for a world order which is either US led or led by any. It is multipolarity. India has championed itself as a strong believer of multipolarity, and I think our foreign minister has done tremendous amount of work and done commendable work in articulating India's policy, which finds a large amount of traction. So if somebody says that India is hegemonistic, we do not have a history or a background of ever having been hegemonistic. And I think there is a great deal of transparency when we are talking about the Quad or talking about connectivity corridors as a challenge, or to kind of offset the influence of the Chinese BRI.
Okay.
So I think it's only China which may have a lot of concerns about it, but China also is not being kept out of the Indo-Pacific. China needs to observe the rules and play by the rules, and is a part of the Indo-Pacific.
I'm being asked by my producer to move on into this particular discussion now. We are joined by Pranav Desai, who is the founder of Voice of Specially Abled People, who's joining us. Thanks very much, Mr. Desai. How would you look at the relationship between India and the United States, especially in the realm of Voice of Specially Abled People? Mr. Desai, are you with us? Well, I'm told that there is a delay and in the transmission, but maybe I can ask you once again, Mr. Desai, how would you look at the visit of the US President Donald Trump, and especially in the line of the work that you do with regard for advocacy for specially abled people?
Hello, Parag, I am not getting the audio.
That's not been able. We will correct that and then get back to Mr. Desai. But yes, we will get back to you. Thanks for the moment, however, for joining us. We shall correct that and get back to Mr. Desai.
Meanwhile, let's once again shift our focus to the outcomes. We in fact had a comprehensive take from you, ma'am, as far as the possible outcomes today are concerned. But very quickly, let's go back to what happened in Motera yesterday. What, according to you, was the largest, rather the biggest import of it? I mean, the way, okay. So once again, live visuals coming in from Hyderabad House. And in a moment from now, I think we're going to have a joint statement coming in. And I think that will give us more clarity. I think right now we should stick to the business part of it. And anything out of the box that could be expected today. We are not speculating here, but considering the way President Trump went on, and here you have the two leaders. One, the leader of the largest democracy, the other, leader of the oldest democracy. There, in any moment from now, the joint presser will reveal the big story and the larger picture when it comes to how this visit, the standalone visit of President Donald Trump, has in fact taken the relationship between India and United States to many, many notches above.
Yes, indeed. And so these are the visuals that we were getting a little while ago from the Hyderabad House. This is the restricted level talks that are taking place between the US President and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And we shall be filling in you with details once we get them from sources and otherwise about what is happening. We are in the meantime trying to correct that line that we have with Mr. Desai, who is the founder of Voice for Specially Able People, which is an app. And Mr. Desai, can you hear me now? Mr. Desai?
Hello?
Yes, can you hear? Can you hear us from the studios of DD India, sir? Doesn't seem to be that.
Hello?
Looks, Mr. Desai, yes.
Mr. Desai, are we audible, sir? Can you hear us?
Hello, Pranav here.
Yes. Can you hear us, sir? Mr. Pranav Desai? Well, there seems to be, okay, I think, Mr. Desai, we can try it one last time. Can you hear us, sir, Mr. Desai? Are we audible? Well, there seems to be a bit of a technical snag there. We will try and go back to talk to Mr. Pranav Desai. Meanwhile, we were in fact talking about the possible outcomes and the question that I asked you from the address at Motera yesterday. All that bonhomie, what is it really going to translate into? Well, we have something on expected lines, but could there be something that could come unexpected? Many would say that yesterday the unpredictability of Donald Trump was not visible in Motera. Like you also mentioned that he stuck to the script, there was a proper homework, but today in front of media, you will have Indian media, international media, contentious issues, so much, and also what really comes out of the joint statement, though there is no structured press conference on cards, but anything out of the box that could be expected today.
See, the joint statement is already sealed and it must have been discussed, and it's along expected lines because there's no trade deal, no mini trade deal, and the fact that Trump still chose to come to India at a time when he has been absolved of the treason, the charges and impeachment charges, his personal rating within the United States is very high. So he's obviously, so one of the reasons is, I think it was this huge welcome which was promised to him in Motera. And I think we have not let him down there. We've not, So it was something which he expected, or maybe beyond what he expected. So that has made him very pleased. And in his speech or his address at Motera, he has turned up, talked about global terrorism, and he brought in Pakistan also in the context of, that we would help Pakistan fight or tackle global terrorism. So it was a very moderated thing. It was none of, he has not said that he is going to mediate between India and Pakistan on Kashmir. So that has not happened so far. If it happens between the two leaders, I doubt if he's going to repeat it. But today, I think what we need to be very watchful of is what's happening in Delhi, the riots. And this could put, even if it's not something which is brought out very openly, I think we need to be conscious of the fact that we pride ourselves in our multipolarity, and this could become a pressure point on India when we are speaking with another democratic country,
Yes.
which again, of course, has its own issues of race and culture.
Dr. Sekho, let's try once again with Pranav Desai, because maybe the connectivity line breaks down each time we talk for a little while. Dr. Desai, it's a pleasure to have you with us, Mr. Desai, here to talk about Indo-US relations in the light of cooperation for specially able persons. What is really on? What actually is the case? What is actually happening between India and the United States in this regard?
Well, thank you very much. I think for asking this question, and first of all, US is the capital for all the assistive devices and assistive technology, which has enabled millions and millions of people with disabilities. So when we look at the trade opportunity between India and US, this is one area, in our opinion, that India has a huge opportunity, to serve its 100 million people with disability by enabling them with assistive device so that they can be functional. And that investment would be very, very strategic in order to achieve that 5 trillion economic vision. And US could be the perfect trading partner in this area, where US companies can think of India as a base to produce these products, not only for the domestic market, but the fast growing aging population of US as well as Europe. And in fact, this is a new industry, and so China is already there, but we have a lot of advantage of our domestic market, our technology power that we have in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley. So this is something we need to really harness, and that's what Voice of Specially Able People I'm founder of. We are around 8,000 plus volunteers.
Right.
We work with Niti Aayog. So this is the area where we can really benefit with this growing convergence, the relationship between Prime Minister Modi ji and Trump.
So is there any forward movement with regard to what you're suggesting, Mr. Desai, in bringing these kind of assistive technologies to India? Because of course it can help a large number of people in India, and India could also be a base to manufacture for areas which in a regional sense, to markets within India's close borders or close proximity, and maybe even to the rest of the world over time because of cost advantages. Do you see this as an area of huge opportunity, and how do you have Indian businesses shown interest in this particular field as of yet?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I was in India before 2 months, and so we are working on this particular opportunity between India and US to realize in multiple ways. The first is policy level. So working closely with Amitabh Kant ji of Niti Aayog and his team to put up a large conclave wherein we bring all the expertise and create a policy framework to give incentives for the businesses to look at investment opportunity in assisted technology. Second, India is a big market, but it requires certain innovation of these products that are made in US or cater to the US market. So like we can send Chandrayaan at or our mission to the Mars at a fraction of a cost to NASA. Why can't we innovate various assistive devices to bring down the cost so that our innovative talent that we have with our youth, because remember, India has a largest demographic dividend, youth. If they can be, some of them, so we have been working with engineering colleges in India, LD Engineering, for example, and we launched Innovation Challenge under SSIP program. Then the third thing is create a capacity. So Voice of SAP, we have signed a memorandum of understanding with Gujarat Technology University, and I'm very happy that yesterday at least 5 of the committee members were there to welcome President Trump at Motera Stadium, and they are our supporters or co-signatories. So we are introducing courses like in America, because America again being the leader in the marketplace, those courses will help create that capacity in assistive technology.
Right.
And of course the business side. So Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Industries, I made a presentation where industry people came in. It was a very, very deep interested, by everybody in the community.
Okay.
So there are 3,000 plus products in the US on assistive devices. Many people have taken this as an initiative to start looking at how to produce some of these products in India, because as of now, even wheelchairs we are importing from China.
Yes, Mr. Desai,
pretty
but at
sure.
what price point is the factor? You did talk about the market forces.
Exactly.
Indeed, I mean, the U.S., obviously, the prices are, could be competitive for the U.S. market, but are they actually competitive for the Indian market in a sense? And you did mention, India has cost advantages of producing here, but at what price point will these products be brought in, so that they can be accessible to the Indian market? Because at the end of the day, it's accessibility also that makes a difference, isn't it?
Absolutely. So that's what I was trying to tell, that India has to look at this as a domestic market big by promoting innovation.
Yes.
Because most of these products that we import or they are available in the US, if we have indigenous version of those products, we can not only serve at a very competitive price to the domestic market, but at the same time to the export markets as well. So the opportunity is in billions and billions of dollars. By one estimate, it is more than $100 billion. These estimates are again a little bit vague, but these are coming from research done by Chinese and other people that they are looking at. Because remember, Chinese companies, there are 10,000 companies making wheelchairs. So can India have a fair play there? I said no. If we start innovating and focus on our domestic production, we certainly don't need to be dependent on the China. But at the same time, there are hundreds of other products which are probably a lot more early stage of innovation, which is where our programming techniques and people in Silicon Valley can take it more as a startup, because India needs to focus on entrepreneurship, startup, and this is the area where hundreds and thousands of jobs can be created.
All right, many thanks, Pranav Desai, founder VOSAP, joining us live all the way. In fact, we're going to just one last question, sir, since you're joining us all the way from United States of America. And in fact, that explained the disconnect. We had difficulty connecting you. But any which way, I would also want to know, your viewers would also want to know you, what is the brewing sentiment on ground when it comes to Indian Americans there? Well, we talked about the innovation, the business part of it. But the Indian Americans there, how are they looking at this visit of President Trump?
They are definitely looking at it as a very historic moment, and certainly it creates lots of opportunities, interest with the local business community here in the US. So the business community
All
in
right,
the US.
I'm sorry I'm interrupting you here. We are getting these live visuals of US's First Lady, her visit to Sarvodaya Co-Educational Senior Secondary School. This is in Moti Bagh, and there you have these children, tiny tots, in fact, with those flags, Indian flags, and the flag of United States of America, greeting her, waving at her, and she's making her way into this school, Sarvodaya Vidyalaya in Moti Bagh. We can see if we can get an audio there with a ceremonial welcome there by those tiny tots there. Yes, audio. All right, and now these live visuals, she's going to take a tour of the school. She's also going to, as per the reports, spend some time inside the class, have a look at the happiness curriculum, interact with children. Reportedly, we'll have to see how this really pans out there inside the school premises. They're accompanied with her entourage there. Those visuals were very moving. In fact, if I may have, ma'am, also your thoughts on this. Well, this is the softer part of diplomacy. And when she comes out, we don't know if she gets to speak to media Yeah, but then a very warm gesture, the First Lady's interaction with the children there in one of those government schools in Motibad. Yes, yes, yes.
I think, as you said, it is a soft power outreach, and I think it's the Americans, the U.S. Embassy, which sought this interaction of Melania, of the U.S. First Lady, in the government school, because they are actually impressed by this the concept of the happiness class,
yes.
given the strata these children belong to. And obviously the Delhi government schools have made an impact on the United States. So it is an important aspect that the First Lady chose to be a part of this, and I believe she's going to actually spend about half an hour inside a class where this happiness curriculum is being enacted. And also, I think soft power has always been a very important part of US-India relations. Even during the Cold War, when the US did not think of India strategically, the soft power for both amongst Indians and the Americans, you know, Indian mysticism, ancient culture, so you had these hippies and all wanting to come to India. Likewise, our technical graduates, engineers, doctors, for them they all aspire to go to the United States. So this people-to-people movement to and froing and interaction has always been a very important part of India and America, and this is something which has actually led to this strategic convergence. And the role which the diaspora has played should never be underestimated.
Now, this happiness class is an interesting concept, and you know, given the fact that U.S. Schools have had some concerns, you know, with violence on campus, you know, not only right up to the college level, and this has been a concern in the United States. How would you see, you know, this sort of an interaction and perhaps lessons learned for the U.S. model of schooling?
It sends an important signal, because in India we lay a lot of stress on yoga and on meditation, and to have taken this concept to the schools and especially to the government schools is an important innovation that has taken place.
Right.
The US too has these yoga studios, but then those are very fancy exclusive yoga studios. So if they can adapt it to the
in a sense, right?
you know, it's more commercial, and you have yoga tourism, and a lot of Americans wanting to travel to India for yoga tourism. But if you can take this concept and actually the meditation, because earlier you did have you know, the Hare Rama, Hare Krishna movement and all, which were very popular in the United States at one time. But then those were limited to adults and to communes which are outside the city limits. And so now to take this, if the US tries to adapt this to the school curriculum, I think this would, because the stress factor in children is very high. And this is something which we witness even in amongst our children here in India. You know, the pressures and all, which I think we were free. We used to play more outdoor games and stuff like that. Whereas,
but
you
this
know,
reminds me, when Michelle Obama, she was here, she also had that bit of an interaction, that part of the soft diplomacy.
you know, Michelle Obama has.
I think we have Mr. Desai still with us.
We'll go to Mr. Desai, but please finish your point.
Michelle Obama, in any case, was doing a lot, you know, work which was visible on school children and especially school girls, since she had 2 young daughters growing up in the White House. Whereas Melania Trump seeking to go is something which is really remarkable, because one really doesn't know much about this First Lady.
Okay, yes, that's
you know?
right.
So, and for her to now show her interest in what happens in a happiness class, I think it sends a very important message for India.
Yes, yes. Let's get Mr. Pranav Desai here.
Yes, let's go back to Mr. Desai. Mr. Desai, in fact, you were telling us about the Indian American community and their, you know, their anticipation, their interest in the visit of the U.S. President Donald Trump to India. And also, you know, we've been discussing at length here in India about whether, you know, this would affect the U.S. President's re-election campaign. You can fill us in with some inputs on that as well.
That is anybody's imagination. Obviously, there are repercussions, so not to go into politics.
Yes.
because for sure there are more clarities to the people and more data points, right? And this relationship is so historic for India. People would have to look at the long-term benefits of India and 21st century that we are looking for Indian century and the economic opportunity that we have. Frankly, we have tremendous upside. What happened in China in 80s probably has started happening with India and US in last maybe 5 years or so, and that should continue with much more accelerated transactions, initiatives, trust, and this friendship should automatically give not only favorable trading partnership status to India, but also to our more relaxed criteria when it comes to our IT folks coming to the US, free trade kind of special arrangements that people are really looking forward to this type of relationship that is growing, because India is part of the solution for the world, for sure, for the US, and a very solid alternative to China, because this is the very perfect timing on that perspective, in my opinion, that we really have to get very serious to shift the whole momentum.
But Mr. Desai, Indians back home would want to know what is the view of Indian diaspora there. You're joining us live all the way from LA. And as far as the 2010 census is concerned, well, it says that around 3.5 lakh first speak Gujarati as the first language speaker, Indian speaking diaspora is also, in fact, also comes from part of LA. Having said that, not really talking about the domestic politics there and how it's really going to impact Donald Trump, but overall the anticipation we saw from Howdy Modi to Motera yesterday, what we saw there, Indian Americans there in LA at least, where you're joining us live from. How important is this visit, and what were their expectations? How are they looking at this visit of Donald Trump?
First of all, it is a very historic time that in 6 months, two very popular global leaders are meeting with such a great optics. So as the Indian diaspora is extremely happy, energized, thinking about many initiatives to take based on this growing relationship and the trust. So at least Howdy Modi, I was there in person, and around 80 of our volunteers came from around the country to attend that historic meet. Even few of our volunteers were there in Ahmedabad. I come from Ahmedabad.
Okay.
So, at least
well, that comes to this very natural question, sir. Your thoughts on Namaste Trump in Motera yesterday?
I know so many people watched it, were so excited. I got so many messages from our volunteers and other different WhatsApp groups. So the excitement, the promise, the biggest thing that frankly we all must appreciate, the details that Trump articulated about India was very reflective of his love and commitment, that how much he knows about India and how much he cares for India. And certainly our Prime Minister did everything absolutely right, so he gets maximum attention from US President, because take it or not, but with the type of relationship that we have now with US, if we would have it before 20 years or so, we would have been ahead of China. It is our moment now to seize it.
Okay. So, Motera event yesterday, did it remind you of Howdy Modi? I mean, we will not compare the two, but since you were also associated with Howdy Modi, in that sense, what are your thoughts?
Yes, we were the hosting partner at Howdy Modi, and I think I was very impressed with the arrangements and the flawless complete program on time. Like Howdy Modi was a bit delayed for some reasons, but this was perfectly
Well
on time,
done.
on schedule, and I think that was very impressive arrangements from start to beginning.
And in
That went.
terms of size and scale,
That is magnificent optics. Nobody in the world, and what I liked about when President Trump started talking about how many people have got the gas lines and infrastructure, roads development. So the world took a note of India becoming very fast-growing country with better infrastructure, millions of people coming out of poverty. That message was obviously well covered by the global media when President Trump talks about it.
but
It
President,
was something very unique.
yes. Well, many experts say, and there are numbers to also back it, that the popularity charts, in terms of popularity chart, Donald Trump is one of the most popular leaders here back in India. And does it hold almost true for our Prime Minister back in USA? Well, as far as his trips to US in the recent past is concerned, well, that also speaks volumes of the fact that not only as far as the diaspora there in America is concerned, but the Americans also love our Prime Minister Modi. Is that
Absolutely. I give you one example. The congressman that I was on the flight from Los Angeles to Dallas, the company I work for, the headquarters is in Dallas. So the Texas congressman was with me. And when he's, learned a little bit about my background and association with Prime Minister Modi ji, he has been talking so highly, and he wanted to come bring a delegation to India for the business, because these people have learned from Howdy Modi, obviously, that India is business friendly, and the most capitalistic society of the country, USA, is now looking at India as an equal partner. Because look at the whole world. Probably we are the most promising country and the economy. If we do everything right, which is I think the right moment we have as of now, we can play our cards so, and I'm very happy that Prime Minister is there to convert this opportunity, this vision into reality. It's not easy. Even $5 trillion people may think like, oh, how it, but that's where the unlocking of the potential of so many areas that we have right now, that we see as a opportunity that has opened up, that will collectively take it to 5 trillion economy. So I think without US that is not possible, put it that way. So US investments and US people have to, I was talking to my manager in the office today, and he also knew on that local newspaper. So media has covered well as well in the US, mainstream media and CNN and other places. So I think people are by and large looking at, because India is a democratic country, and we all are very proud that 3-4 million Indians in America have created extremely good reputation. It could be corporate America like Microsoft or Adobe or Google or those companies, Novartis, CEOs.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you briefly here. Once again, live visuals from one of the classrooms there in Sarvodaya Vidyalaya in Moti Bagh. First Lady there interacting with the tiny tots, and she's also going to be spending some time there. Reportedly, she's going to take a look at the happiness curriculum there. You can see all smiling and beaming at these kids. In fact, we can also spot that, ma'am, your thoughts on it, a red tilak. I mean, that's our way of welcoming. That's a traditional way to welcome. Yes, if we could go back to those visuals. And yes, let's also now touch upon a bit on the soft part of the diplomacy, the softer diplomacy. Yes.
I think she's been given a traditional welcome, as is our, it's nothing new since she's here, and we saw those two little girls who gave, so they must have obviously put the tilak. And she's supposed to be spending about half an hour, is what I had heard. So I think, I don't think she's really going to speak, because unless, of course, but obviously somebody would explain the concept behind the happiness class. And she would, I mean, it's difficult to say what memories she takes back, but obviously they're going to be very happy memories and very calm and a peaceful atmosphere, as you can see in the schoolroom.
We have an audio coming in.
Now Deepa ma'am is going to tell you a wonderful story about a little girl who also loves singing as you do.
And Deepa ma'am also loves singing a lot. Okay, so today we have this book, and from the cover page, I just want to know that what idea you getting for the story. Yes, I think the story can be about the sad girl. The sad girl, okay, yes.
whatever little audio we can get, we can see that they are talking about a happy story. And I think that the US First Lady is very interested in whatever is happening over there, as we can clearly see. She's quite amused and involved with the entire process.
Well, there's a very colourful display board behind her, and visibly happy and smiling First Lady and those tiny tots. Well, what we can tell our viewers, these are the live visuals from Sarvodaya Vidyalaya there in Moti Bagh. The happiness curriculum event underway, where it's expected that she's going to spend some time there. It's part of her 36 power-packed intense tour, and when she comes out, whether she'll talk to media or not, well, whether at any forum, in fact, today, for whatever little hours they are here, whether she's going to share her experiences. But then, having said that, talking about the First Lady, not much is known about her as far as her interests beyond, well, she hasn't been, like the way her husband has been, pretty interactive when it comes to media, very spontaneous also, not her, but.
Even in the United States, you never see her interacting with the media.
Yeah, I meant in US only.
You know, so over here, no, we haven't. So I doubt if she's going to have any media interaction. But as far as her interests are concerned, I think she would be interested in children's education, because she has a young son who's about 10 or 11 years old, and she does apparently take a lot of interest in his schooling and his extracurricular activities and the extra special classes he takes. So obviously she would be interested in these kind of things, and the happiness class would probably be one such aspect. She's looking at it purely from the fact that she herself has a young son. So I think that is the only little bit one could deduce.
How integral are such engagements when they are part of the diplomatic, rather power-packed diplomatic itinerary? How significant are such engagements?
The engagements of the First Lady?
Yes.
I think this is the only engagement she has, and since this was specifically asked for by the US administration, so I think she obviously puts a lot of emphasis on this aspect of educating children. Apart from that, she may be having a shopping trip somewhere. I'm not aware of the nitty-gritties of her itinerary. You know, because of the limited time they have. And as I think even you mentioned, she is a very reticent person, and not much is known about her and her personal likes.
Let's go back once again to Mr. Desai. He's still with us. We are happy to have him with us all the way from Los Angeles. Mr. Desai, you were talking actually in a larger context about the $5 trillion economy when we got interrupted, and you were suggesting that, you know, there are many areas of cooperation that can take our economy to $5 trillion, and the US is absolutely essential for that. Could you elaborate on a little more about that? You had already spoken about assistive technologies. You said it's a, you know, it's a several billion-dollar industry, and it can help India a great deal. Apart from assistive technologies, what are the areas, you know, and that the Indian diaspora in the US is actually pushing for to, you know, bring investments into our country?
You know, again, I'm looking at the tourism industry more as a very promising and untapped area for unlocking that economic potential. And as a advocacy organization on disability rights, Voice of SAP, we promote accessibility, especially to at every tourist place. So that, you know, currently we all know that many beautiful places which could attract thousands and thousands of foreign tourists to India are not accessible. So if we invest strategically to make all these tourist places fully accessible, like what is in the US or in other developed countries like Switzerland, I'm pretty sure that millions of service sector jobs, tourism related jobs can be created, because I think we have just scratched the surface. Not even 5% of our potential that we have realized. And I think this is one area where many Prime Minister talked to us during the lunch meeting in Howdy Modi to a small group of Indian, you know, a group of people that bring people from America who have never seen India. And that's where he was asking for a promise that each one of us should try their maximum to bring Americans to India with this growing relationship, trust,
Right.
and coming democracies together. And if we have infrastructure that is accessible, like America, I have a portfolio with both the legs, and still I am working as a vice president of sales for North America for business unit. That
Right.
is possible because it's accessible. So if India becomes accessible, tourism potential can be realized by creating jobs and the revenue both.
Right.
Of course, domestic tourism is also increased. But,
Absolutely.
that's where investment also could come from, because remember, Gujaratis are owning 70% of the hotel chain that, as we all know. They would love to invest big time in India if the tourism business is more promising.
It is very promising, as you did mention. We have almost everything, and it's a huge job creator as well. But you said that accessibility could be an issue, and I think the government is working on accessibility for people with disabilities into a lot of these areas and building infrastructure. That itself is an opportunity in a sense, isn't it? The methods to try and build infrastructure that it actually should be the norm, because that's the way it should be across the world. For equal rights.
Yeah,
yes.
But when it is it's a norm versus when you start seeing as a business opportunity, the investment will start coming. The things will start happening. So I think we have to go to that next step where commitments are converted into reality, and places are made accessible either by government investment or whatever way we can do. But that is important. And the third area of US-India cooperation could be on the healthcare sector, because this home healthcare and the nursing and other, Philippines is right now dominating the US market for home healthcare. Millions of jobs. So India starts creating those skilled pool of nurses. Not only it will help domestic market for people with old age or disabilities, but also those competent courses like speech therapist or other physiotherapists and all that are extremely good export-oriented, jobs and market for Indians to come to the US. There's both the way.
Sure.
I think we should look at that also as an area to invest, to create capacity of trained physiotherapists, speech therapists, assistive technology usage, how it can.
Dr. Sikho, how would you look at what Mr. Desai has been saying? He's mentioned the three areas, the assistive technologies for accessibility. He mentioned tourism, and then healthcare. To what extent, are all these featured in discussions at the top level, in business to business or in government to business kind of discussions?
These are all very important areas for cooperation, because when you're talking about soft power, or when you're talking about an engagement between two such big nations and democracies at that, it cannot always be about hard power and the strategic partnership or the strategic convergence. As I mentioned earlier, soft power has always played a very important role in US-India relations and the level of comfort we have reached today. And tourism is one, but it has not been exploited to its full potential between India and the United States. I think we need to get our infrastructure more in order to attract. It is a very conscious policy to promote tourism, by the government of India. But we really need to do more. We need to make our monuments and a lot of other places more tourist friendly, and especially for the women tourists, women traveling alone. There are issues. We have history, we have culture, but we need to kind of make it into a holistic experience for anyone coming. And education and healthcare, I think this is where a real bonding between the two nations can take place, because this is the need of India. We need innovation, we need technology, we need to open up, because we have this huge youth force which is looking for employability and for looking at the right kind of education and technical skills which would make it employable. So so to safeguard against this youth dividend becoming into a youth bulge is a challenge which must be addressed very seriously by our government.
Okay.
And we need to have a very serious high level, not just government to government, it has to be expedited at the business to business, and there has to be a definite policy input from the government or a policy direction. To have skill development. It is a part of government's policy, skill development, smart cities, and how to integrate our youth into this whole vision which our government has enunciated for the country. I think innovation, technology, education, youth, all this becomes very important, and it has to be treated as a composite whole.
Let me also take this opportunity to welcome Professor Somyajit Roy. He's Assistant Professor for the Center of Canadian, US and Latin American Studies. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us. Good afternoon. And to begin with your thoughts on what is now expected in few hours, because the hard talk, the operative part of the tour, if I may put it that way, will come into play. We'll have more clarity about the much anticipated trade agreement, the large or the small part of it, because yesterday he referred to it as large trade deal. But the comments prior to his visit to India were absolutely contrasting. Having said that, putting aside the bonhomie part of it, the business part of it, your thoughts?
See, as I said yesterday also, we should not be expecting too much. But to go back to President Trump's observations, he said that India was the king of tariffs. Now, he is not going to give a country who he calls the king of tariffs and a tariff-free access to the American market. That is for sure. So, we should not be expecting on that front. But then the sky is the limit. India, it all depends on American initiative and of course India's large-heartedness, to what extent India is willing to open access to its markets. I believe at a very personal level that there are certain areas in which economic cooperation, trade cooperation can happen. One is when we talk of healthcare. Healthcare has certain dimensions. One may be health equipments. The other is health insurance. As we know that America is actually a country of health insurance. So, that is one area, but it all depends on the government of India. The other is real estate. These two, I believe, it's a very personal thing. I'm not an expert on trade, I'm not an expert on economics. But then that, I believe that these two are areas which the two countries, especially the government of India, can look into. If not now, if not today itself. Don't expect everything today because it's a very short visit. And he has said that we can achieve many things if the trade deal that he is thinking about. He had already said that it can come after the November election. So, if he wins, there will be another 4 more years and we can expect to reach the huge amount of trade partnership, the dimension that we are looking forward to. That may be reached during his tenure as president. So, don't expect too much today. If it happens, nothing like it. But if it doesn't, then we should be expecting a Trump victory in November.
Sure.
Because if it is not President Trump, and if someone else becomes president, and someone else may be from the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party at the moment does not have high opinion of Narendra Modi, does not have high opinion of the BJP. It is perceived as anti-Muslim, it is perceived as anti-minority. So, if we have a lot of expectations from America regarding trade, regarding anything, regarding defense deals, regarding everything, that is something that we must expect. I'm not saying that we should be campaigning for President Trump. We must expect at least that is one thing we can do.
Since you mentioned campaigning, I would want to know from you. And as we stay once again with these live visuals coming in, I think Mark, that's the live feed coming in from Vidyalaya.
No,
Actually, I think Mr.
Moti
Desai is still with us.
Yes,
And
Mr.
I think
Desai, would you like to share your thoughts on the fact there's a lot of buzz here also? Well, this is also seen from an electoral angle as far as President Trump's India visit is concerned and his outreach to Indian Americans way back in America is concerned, the kind of perception that he would want to capitalize on, that he's an American president who is very friendly with Indians in any part of the world. He's that friendly American president.
Yeah, I think it is very natural, right? When the optics of our Prime Minister, who is so popular that no other leader that India ever had, who has been so much popular, especially with the Indian diaspora here in the US. So that data point, that optics certainly will help. I don't see any question why, but certainly also it will require some tangible outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And we need a good trade agreement probably sooner than later, because our economy needs it, and we really are kind of in rush rather to delay any further, having more trade opportunities, lifting all the visa restrictions for our people, and having special focus on the type of
I'm going to interrupt you for another 2 or 3 minutes, Mr. Desai, because as you continue to stay with us all the way from LA, we also getting these live visuals of the First Lady, her freewheel interaction with those tiny tots there in Sarvodaya Vidyalaya in Moti Bagh. Reportedly, she's going to witness some of the activities in the classroom, part of the diplomacy that would be called softer diplomacy. And how essential and important is that going to be for the fact that not much is known about her? Well, this is her first India visit, the maiden India visit in here. Well, if you look at the body language,
we can actually try and get Mr. Desai's opinion on education in the United States.
Yes, and we stay with the live visuals.
Right.
Professor Desai, would you like to comment on it? She's interacting with these kids and she's going to have a look at the happiness curriculum. And by the way, these visuals look, I mean, she's enjoying, she's engrossed, and she's enjoying every bit, every moment of it. Extremely comfortable in that space.
No, so I think this is a very good area that thank you for bringing to notice, because Voice of SAP, the organization that I have started, we are focusing on empowering of specially able people by providing accessibility, education, and employment. So education, especially the schools, I don't know whether this school particularly is inclusive, having all the practices or, to promote the inclusive education. But by new law, Rights of People with Disability 2016, new law, inclusive education is very much part of the new law. And America, and I'm sure First Lady would have enough knowledge about seeing at least in America, every school has inclusive education. That means people with disabilities study side by side along with the people who are not disabled, and that's what we need in the schools. So I think there's a huge opportunity in the education sector as how India can also become inclusive education system when it comes to people with disability. And that's where I think if people are really taking more interest, those gaps will probably emerge. I don't know about this particular school, but if it is inclusive, I hope they will show some of those investments being made, because I have seen Amar Jyoti school in Delhi, extremely impressive, inclusive education. One could learn from them, that model. And we need many schools like that.
Sure. So these were visuals that we were getting from the Sarvodaya school in Moti Bagh. And Mr. Desai, you can stay with us also on the education front because you've raised that topic. You've raised the issue of accessibility in schools. What is the norm in the United States? What is the situation there that, India can emulate? That you think that, our schools have unique models because we have to first keep children in school. Children are often, their parents find them other activities so that they can earn for the families. I'm talking about from the poorer sections of society. We have certain different needs in a sense, or challenges. But how would you view? How would you compare the systems?
Education system, especially primary school, is very, very focused on, investment in every child, no child left behind. That policy came long back, and investment of providing assistive devices or the tools to learn for children with autism, children with visual impairment, all of that. So every school would have a teachers who are experts in special need education. Unfortunately, in India, we have still a huge gap of teachers even understanding what is Braille or what are the basics of disability. So we are starting with our Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. I have seen that initiative and investments, and we have a long way to go and learn from the US model. So the students in the US, from the childhood, children do not look at people with disability or student with disability as like stigma or something that they have not seen, because from the very childhood they have been brought up on side by side with people in wheelchair and people with hearing and visual impairment. This is what, if we build in India the inclusive society, the dream of having an inclusive society would really become true. Another thing in the US education system is that the progress, individual progress, is being tracked for a student with disability very, very meticulously. So huge investment again on the tools and techniques as what is the learning that they have done, what else could be done. They have a concept of homeschooling, so they will send the teacher to the home if the student with disability cannot go to the school. So it's a huge gap between the US and India. The good news is that many Indian community people are teachers in the schools, especially special ability, special need educators. Now, that is what Voice of SF is trying to connect the dots and bring that knowledge and expertise to India, so that we can also, improve on that inclusive education.
Okay, let's bring in Professor Ray also into the discussion. Professor Ray, you are actually in the field of education, but at the higher level. This meeting of Melania Trump with children is about the happiness class, a unique model that is being brought about. The importance of of creating happiness at the children's level, so that the potential of the child is fully achieved. At the university level, how are issues like this actually taken up? To see the well-being of the students so that they can achieve their highest potential.
See, I believe that higher education in India, college, and by higher education we mean college and university education, that is quite inclusive in India. So that part is taken care of, whether it is physical disability or whether anything that arises because of past hindrances. So that higher education is quite inclusive. But then a lot needs to be done. There are students who, there is a gap between the rural and the urban, which I believe. I have been a student of the same university where I work now, and I believe that there has been a major gap between the urban and the rural, if not anything else. We have covered the issue of caste, we have covered the issue of religion, we have covered the issue of physical disability. Those things have been taken care of. But I think that whenever a student comes to a city like Delhi for pursuing higher education from a rural background, there is a feeling of alienation in that student. And I think that there is a lot that needs to be done regarding that. And I don't know to what extent the United States can help in this, but India must address it in a way that urbanization that has taken place over the years in India, that doesn't leave anyone out. One of the goals, objectives of our education in our university is not simply the classroom. Teaching is not the classroom.
In fact, we've got some live visuals coming in here, I think. In fact, if we're getting the sound, let's listen to what the Prime Minister is saying.
उसके बावजूद भी आपने भारत का निमंत्रण स्वीकार किया। मैं आपका बहुत बहुत आभारी हूँ। आपका और आपके पूरे डेलीगेशन का मैं हृदय से बहुत बहुत स्वागत करता हूँ।
Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. The last 2 days have been amazing in every sense of the word, from every stop. Very special people, as you know. We have people in the United States. We have a number of them representing us here today that are very proud. Their parents are living right now in India, and they're from India originally. They're incredible people. We have many millions of people. I get different numbers all the time, but we have millions of people from India living in the United States and doing very well in the United States. And I look forward to you explaining a little bit later on to the media the progress we've made and the on trade, on fighter jets, on commercial airlines, and various other things, and energy. We're working on some very, very substantial transactions, and I think it's going very well. But the last 2 days, especially when you look at what we did yesterday, filling up that stadium, and they had thousands of people outside trying to get in, that was a great honor for me and a great honor for you. They were there for you. I would even imagine they were there for you more than for me. I hope so, anyway. That the people love you. When I spoke of you, and I speak with great fondness, the people stood up yesterday and they cheered. You had 125,000 people, I guess, inside, and you had many people on the lawns. And every time I mentioned your name, they would cheer. So they love you in India, and that's a good thing.
मैं आपका आभारी हूँ राष्ट्रपति जी।
Thank you very much.
So those were opening comments being made, and we heard the U.S. President there referring once again back to the visit to the Moteras, the Namaste Trump event, and he's talked about the popularity of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and of course he was overwhelmed by that event. But initially he also spoke about the Indian American community, and he said that he gets new figures every day about the number of Indian Americans there. But he says they're doing very well in the United States, and they're contributing a great deal. Some of them were with his own delegation. They were sitting in the room he was pointing out. So this is the beginning of the delegation level talks that have just begun, and those were live visuals. The Prime Minister, of course, was
with Thanksgiving.
That's right, with the importance of the visit and welcoming the U.S. President to India once again for those talks.
The mention of Indian Americans in the very first part. Well, do you think it's a prelude to something coming up big?
See, Indian Americans are an important component of American society. There's no doubt about it. As I told you yesterday, this president is neither after Indian American vote nor after Indian American money. Of course, he will benefit from both if they vote for him or put money in the Republican coffers. But they are not a very big section of the American population. And the other thing that is important that everyone in India chooses to overlook is Indian Americans will be welcome to President Trump till the time they are more American and less Indian. So that is that he is a nativist. He is a mainstreamer. He is not very pro-immigrant. So even though a lot of Indian Americans are Republican, they have voted for President Trump, and he keeps acknowledging their contribution towards the building of America, and which he did yesterday also, which he did today also. But that does not mean too much enthusiasm by Indian Americans for India will enthuse him as well. So that is something that I believe in.
Many are talking about the timings of this visit. That's very important. In fact, let's have a quick word from Mr. Desai also. Mr. Desai, if you could, well, that was a very brief opening remarks from both leaders. What do you make of it? Mr. Desai.
Yeah, what was the question?
Yeah, the question was, all right, we're going once again back live. Or All right, we'll try and retrieve that feed. Professor Desai, but there was the initial bit. If you could just play that bit again. Very brief intervention, brief opening remarks coming in from both sides, President Trump as well as Prime Minister Modi. And in President Trump first part of the speech, the opening remarks, there was a multiple mention of Indian Americans and how they are important. What do you make of it?
Yeah, he clearly acknowledges, see, he's a businessman, right? And he understands that when he is meeting with America's top CEOs, many of them are Indians. So you just can't ignore the fact that the contribution of Indian Americans in the US economy and the growth is disproportionate to the population. So yes, our population is not much relevant in terms of whether Indians will work for Mr. Trump or not. But definitely the economic contribution is tremendous. And that is number one. And second is, again, as you can see that many businesses, not only technology, but also on the other businesses that Indians have done very well, and also the medical professions. Many remote areas in the US are well served by Indian origin physicians. So those organizations are also a big part when President Trump frequently acknowledges, because medical, so healthcare is very important, technology is very important, and the travel and tourism and hotel industry is very important, President Trump himself. So that put together certainly is probably disproportionately surrounded by Indian origin Indian Americans in that sense, and definitely that carries a big impression on him, in addition to the population and the large, great welcome that he always receives in different, meetings and gatherings.
Yes. Right, and Mr. Desai, there is also in fact, one of the views that has come from the studio, if you heard Professor Ray, he said that actually, he's conservative in the sense that, not too welcoming to foreigners. That's the approach of the Republican Party and their core interests. So in that context, of course, a lot of the Indian Americans do vote Republican. But, is that an area that, an area of concern going ahead in the future?
To be very frank, yes. We are talking about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And, America has been the same country where it has welcomed immigrants from all around the world. But they were so much open society, so maybe there is a balance that was needed, because if your borders are not protected, if the people find ways and means to get into America and harm America, sure, we would not tolerate that in India also. We want our people to be properly coming to our country, and that's part of the immigration that one has to understand. The legal immigration, I don't think people have any problem. But the illegal, and it's many times a systematic fraud that no country should allow, in fact, India or America.
And the illegal immigrant issue, is that an area of concern, because, well, the sizable Indian community is large, and you did say they do contribute disproportionately in the sense that we contribute much more than our size. But there is also a concern now about, our concept of our way of life. One person goes to the United States and the whole family comes there. And that has been raised in certain quarters. As you know, that method of immigration, even though it is legal, may actually raise a few eyebrows.
Yes, if you think like, not like just from the patriotic sense, but simply business sense, right? Whom would you like to come to your country or your company?
Yes.
The people who are most productive, valuable, right?
That's
So
right.
people who came on H1 visa and their families, yes, absolutely. But if you keep bringing the family-related people more at the cost of more talented students, right now American universities, the next to the defense and technology, universities are the exchequers. I mean, exporters, or earning the foreign exchange for America. Thousands and thousands of students from India have come to the US. By all means, as an Indian, I would hope that our technical people, our students in the universities, get visa much quicker. And that can happen probably by some reshuffling of the priorities and quota from family to the skill base. And that's what is, I think, in UK and other countries also. Canada has also point system. So, in fact, this is a great country who, again, I'm personally the beneficiary of polio.
Yes.
I was not sure whether I will to the US. I got Canada point system probably not even will approve me. And I don't know, I have never applied, so I can't comment. But this is a great country who is so much inclusive. And that's what we have to all appreciate and try to become as a society, that how much we can be inclusive to give the share of our, wealth and our thing on the merit. And that's what I think this is a great country, because they have accepted, not only accepted, they have accepted at every level in America. Think about India, how many people would accept somebody from other country.
Mr. Desai. In fact, Professor Ray, who's in the studio with us, has been listening to you and would like to comment, and perhaps you can comment back on what he has to say.
See, the new immigration thinking that President Trump has brought in is family will no more be the basis for immigration. Talent will be. So, Indian parents who send their kids to America for studies need not worry that that person will settle, that their son or daughter will settle down in America, get married to an American. So, that kind of worries need not be there, because it will be difficult for that Indian student who went to America to acquire a degree. It will be difficult for that student to settle down in America now. That is, the old days are gone, because once you go, during the old days when we were young, it was like if you go to America, you acquire a degree and you stay back in America,
you get
and become an
American,
get absorbed. That is why I said yesterday that if the Indian American community is going to replenish itself, immigration will not be the way to replenish. So, Indian parents need not worry, their kids will come back to India.
What do you make of
I think let Mr. Desai respond, yes.
Okay, yes, sure.
That I don't know. Professors back data.
Their kids will come back to India.
What do you make of their initial
I think let
remarks?
Mr. Desai respond, yes.
Okay, yes, sure.
That I don't know. Professors back data. But when the talent is the focus, as of now, our students in the universities, yes, if they do not get visa, they will have to go back to India. But when the focus is on the talent and merits, there is much more focus on putting on fast track for the visa of the students, master's degree particularly. So I see it as a probably a better way for replenishing or the continue to grow Indian community or Indian diaspora in the US, which is more talented and coming here for the opportunities with higher education, which was earlier not the case. I mean, people had to really struggle, and still this is not implemented. I think still students may have to go back because of lack of available visa. But if the new immigration changes the criteria and focuses on talent and merits, I'm very positive that thousands of our students will become will call the US.
Yes, so thanks very much, Mr. Desai, for joining us. You've spent a lot of time with us. You've talked about, the voice for specially able people, the potential for communication.
The popularity of both leaders in respective countries.
Apart from that, I mean, from his core interests about the potential for investments in India, especially in assistive technologies, in areas other than that. We appreciate your time. Thanks very much for putting this into perspective all the way from Los Angeles. And we continue with Professor Ray.
Yes, you were in fact wanting to elaborate on the initial remarks that both leaders
made. I could not finish that. I think President Trump has understood that Prime Minister Modi is infinitely more popular than any other leader as far as India is concerned. Even though Modi was a native son yesterday, the program was being held in Gujarat. But many people may say that. But I believe that if that program would have been held anywhere in India, if not in Ahmedabad, anywhere in India, it would have evoked the same response from the crowd.
That's
because
important.
of the, the people are trying to say that it was he's Gujarat's native son, so he has a lot of popularity. But he was not speaking in Gujarati in the first place. Of course, he is their pride. That's no doubt about it. If you have a prime minister like that from your state, he's a pride.
And if you would have noticed, every second or third word from Donald Trump,
he also
before he
mentioned
could finish his sentence, drew larger cheers from the crowd.
So Trump has noticed that every time Prime Minister Modi said something, there was huge applause from the crowd, and I believe that that's not a bad thing. That's true. But another thing which I think that the crowd did not respond so much to President Trump was the lack of knowledge of the English language, and that too spoken with a heavy American accent.
That's true, but actually there were translation boards that were there at the stadium, but perhaps not available to all groups. So there were, they were responses to almost everything he said, but some of the things that were more spontaneous, people understood, and we got the responses that we could understand. So let's come back to what's happening today, then, Professor Ray. What would you think are the key areas that, or some of the agreements that we are likely to see today, in your opinion?
Defense agreement for sure. Defense, whether it's the sharing of defense technology or manufacturing or the transfer of technology. So the helicopters are going to come, there's no doubt about it. But one thing I should mention, and then link it back to his speech yesterday, is that any enhancement of defense capability of India may raise hackles in Pakistan. And that is one reason why I believe that he had said that Pakistan continues to be a friend of the United States. That was not a confidence building statement, it was actually a confidence sustaining statement, that Pakistan should not lose confidence in American friendship, because America does not have any special love for Pakistan. Why does America continue with Pakistan even after so many years after the end of the Cold War? What is so special about Pakistan is that under the circumstances, if America abandons Pakistan, then America will lose all control over Pakistan, and Pakistan may join the ranks of what President Bush had called a rogue nation. So one thing that I'm not a trade expert, so I don't know the contours of the trade agreement that may happen, but of course a defense deal is going to come.
So you've raised a very interesting point there. Professor Sriram Cholya also in fact joins. Yes, Sriram Cholya also joining us. Let me take it to you, Sriram. A certain word of caution when it comes to Donald Trump's mention, the way the word Pakistan was brought in yesterday. He doesn't want to upset or unsettle Pakistan. And if that is the case, should that worry us, or we can just choose to ignore it and avoid it under the carpet?
Well, Sakal, from a pure US national interest point of view, they do need Pakistani support to get out of Afghanistan, to extricate themselves. And Trump has been very open about it. And the talks with the Taliban have now reached a kind of like an apogee, and it's likely that they will announce a deal. Now we are going through the so-called lull in fighting, or reduction in violence phase in Afghanistan. And the Pakistanis are the ones who helped the US to get the Taliban to the table. But of course, we know that they played a double game where on one hand they are enabling the diplomacy and helping Trump. On the other hand, they have been biting the hand that feeds by propping up a lot of these jihadist actors inside Afghanistan and destabilizing that country. Not to mention in our Kashmir. So I think the US knows it, but I think they feel like they cannot go beyond a point in antagonizing Pakistan either. So there was that balancing act. I agree with you, Sakal. But surely, I think
the mention of Islamic terror, ISIS, the execution of Baghdadi. What was he trying to say?
I think, they think about global terror. They say global terrorists as opposed to India-focused terrorists, and they think ISIS is the bigger threat because, it has directly targeted US allies in the Middle East and all those things. And when it comes to the subcontinent, they think it's something that the Indians should be able to sort on their own, which is okay. Look, Homeland security is one of the areas on which we are going to sign a deal today, an agreement. Now, these are the areas where border protection and surveillance and better ability to pinpoint terrorist training centers which are across the border in Pakistani territory. Those kind of things we should be looking at. Intelligence sharing. The National Security Advisor O'Brien is traveling along with President Trump circle, and Mr. Doval is also very much present in all the engagements. So we would want to see tighter intelligence sharing. Generally, when we say intelligence sharing, it's when we say broadly terrorism, it's the US has a different understanding of it. But I think the effort of Dr. Jaishankar and our Prime Minister Modi has been to try and convince the Americans to think about shared threats. So the shared threat is not only Indo-Pacific, which is a broader issue, but it's about this rising. And by the way, even ISIS is on the cards because some of our youth had been misguided and had gone, and there is this threat.
But Dr. Chowdary, isn't there already enough intelligence sharing at a high level? Because that's how a number of attacks have been stopped. There has been, given the current kind of technology that's available with mobile phones and the manner in which data is being easily accessed and things like that, this ability to share is much faster, and it has actually been happening. What more can be done? What more are you expecting in terms of higher intelligence sharing?
Adding to what Mark is saying, you talk about the nitty-gritties. You have a dossier of 2611 and Pakistan's alleged involvement in Pulwama terror attack. And do we really need United States to tell us that yes, we are with you when it comes to pushing Pakistan to the wall or adding to Pakistan's international isolation? Because at the end of the day, for India, for us, the way we've been at the end of the terror and talking openly about it as far as Pak-sponsored terror is concerned, do we really need US to endorse that?
No, Sakal, there are two things. One, they should stop asking us to exercise restraint. Whenever we are faced with a serious challenge to national security, we don't want the US to come and say, or things like mediation and so on. Those are totally off the table as far as we are concerned.
Absolutely.
But as far as something new, Mark, something new that they could do for us, we are now negotiating the 4th foundational agreement for military cooperation, which is called BECA. And this one is going to involve satellite-based navigation technology and sharing of imagery and videography and such things, which we have never done with any country before. So this is a higher level of strategic partnership. Almost except formal allies, the US would not share something of that level, and we will need it, for establishing deterrence. From the western border of Pakistan with Afghanistan, where they have been causing trouble and destabilizing that country, to the eastern side towards Kashmir and Punjab, our Punjab, we will need those, technical tools for better surveillance and monitoring and for pinpointed targeting. This is the era of precision guided warfare. We need to know exactly where the coordinates are, and because if it goes even 1 inch or this way or that way, there will be a outcry, and the Pakistanis again, like Balakot, they'll claim that nothing happened, although we did hit their targets. So the point is, we need those, and to that extent, if the US is willing to go that far, I think the US will not directly ever attack and take out a Masood Azhar or a Hafiz Saeed, because as far as they are concerned, as I said, they don't think these are global terrorists, even though they are, and they're UN designated terrorists. But that's where the narrow national interest comes in. So we should take whatever we can in terms of technical know-how and intelligence from the US, and then use our own means and be self-reliant.
So we have wider convergence, except for economic convergence that since yesterday we've been discussing comprehensively about it. It is a bit of a challenge. Professor.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to Professor that two things. One, I think if I remember correctly, after Pulwama, President Trump had said something like one more Pulwama and Pakistan is going to have it. That's something that he had said. That is one thing. And another issue which no one is talking about, it is not on the table because there is no deal regarding it. It doesn't come into the as a defense deal or a trade deal. The issue is the issue of Iran. Iran will continue to be a friction area, even though a limited friction area. And if you go back to the agreement, the civil nuclear deal that President Bush gave to India, one of the conditions of the deal was that, and I have a copy, I downloaded it, I have a copy of that deal, that if America moves militarily against Iran at some point of time, India will not object to it. That is, and that was given. Why was that condition put? It was put because India is perceived to be sufficiently close to Iran. At a personal level, I believe that General Soleimani should not have been killed, because his murder, if I may use the term, the taking out of General Soleimani has actually weakened the war against the ISIS. And India, of course, did not take a very strong stand regarding that. I don't know why. Because that agreement...
It was an act of war, isn't it, in a sense? And if you say that we are bound by the agreement that we have signed, then that we maintain neutrality. Yeah,
I don't know whether India has kept that in mind and kept quiet, or has kept quiet for some other reason. But India should have taken a stand, some way or the other, with regard to the killing of General Soleimani.
All right, Sriram, you want to comment on that?
Yeah,
how consequential is that going to be?
No, I agree that Iran, we have a special relationship because it's enabling us to have access to Central Asia through Chabahar, and frankly, Iran has never really harmed Indian national security interests. Some of their proxies may be challenging US allies like Israel and Saudi Arabia in the Middle East, but not us at all. There is no Shia extremism that is a threat to India. Our, the radical Islamic terrorism that Trump keeps talking about, and he mentioned that yesterday in Motera also, they usually bracket Iran as part of it, But our understanding is more sophisticated. We know the division between Shia and Sunni, in the region, and with Iran we want to cooperate. We need access, because we don't have direct land access to Afghanistan. We need Iran via Chabahar and the Arabian Sea. So I think we would want Iran to actually, frankly, we should not. I don't think we should raise it today.
But is it of any consequence when it comes to the current engagements and the current gamut of dialogue process? And because in few hours from now we'll have more clarity. But is it really that tight rope to walk for India? We're talking about Iran in our case, and Pakistan in case of United States.
Yeah, Sakal, look, we have stopped buying or reduced our purchase of Iranian oil because of the US sanctions and the non-availability of insurance and finance. This happened even during Obama administration, and the US itself is coming in now as a larger supplier of oil and gas for us, and we have now bought up to $6 billion of US energy supplies in the last couple of years. So Trump wants more energy access to India, and we are also on the lookout for substitutes, because most of the world, barring China to some extent, has been moving away from Iranian oil. So there is an adjustment there, and Trump administration knows about it. But the Trump administration also knows that we have our own geopolitical compulsions. This is a very sophisticated relationship, Sakal. We are not the type where we are going to kowtow and bow just because the US is doing it. We have to follow their line. No. We have our own interests. We will defend those interests, but we look for shared points of convergence with the US to the extent possible.
Right, that's important as far as Iran is concerned, but in the larger strategic realm, the questions regarding Iran, are they, would they be utilized by the States in some sort of leverage to get, because in a traditional model of finding deals, anything is on the table, and that is the method that the US president adopts. He does differentiate between what is strategic, what is economic, what is this. He utilized the other.
Yeah, that's called linkage. In
that's called
diplomacy,
linkage.
it's called
Right.
linkage
Okay.
and cross-issue linkage. That's what does. Even on North Korea, for example, with China, he has dangled the issue of solving the North Korea problem in return for settling the trade dispute with China. So these kind of cross-issue linkages do exist, but I think we should be wary of those because we have our own geopolitical. That's why I said, see, look at our geography, look at where the US is on the world map.
No, definitely we are wary, but how does one avoid it when put onto the table?
Well, that's where I said we draw our lead lines and
Okay,
say
fair
beyond a point, you cannot force us to stop cooperation. In fact, even on Russia, for that matter, the Trump administration has piled on a lot of pressure to try and desist us from buying the Russian S-400 missile system. We have not done that.
Sure.
We are stuck to our guns, and we need that. At the same time, Trump has been talking up the value of the U.S. Anti-aircraft missile defense system, which is not comparable to S-400, but performs other functions. We may be willing to buy some of those. So what we're telling, from Trump's point of view, this is the world's biggest arms bazaar. And India should be open to buy more and more and more. And that's why he was trumpeting it. But on the other hand, we will be selective. We will be nuanced. This is Indian diplomacy. It's not black and white for us. There are a lot of gray areas, and we will look for our own national interests and get as much buy-in from the Americans to that to the extent possible.
Right.
Okay, final comments, Professor Roy?
Yeah, I mean, if India is an arms bazaar, it all depends on India's threat perception. One thing that I must mention here, I should not forget, and no one should forget, that the Republican Party as such was very enthusiastic, very supportive of India's nuclear aspirations, because it believes, like India did, and during the time Prime Minister Vajpayee was there, the early government, that China is actually a bigger threat to India than that apart. The other thing that I would like to mention here, President Trump is trying to balance concern for environment with with new technologies, the coming of new technologies. He is very about what is we known as clean coal. Clean coal is not a product, clean coal is a technology. So to what extent that India has been repeatedly faulted on its practices regarding the environment. To what extent he will bring the today or later, that we don't know.
We'll have to quickly wrap up this part of the on our special broadcast and global coverage of Trump. Thank you very much, gentlemen. In fact, in a very, very short breather, we will be joined by Munmun and Shamachandra will be taking ahead with this biggest story of the day. Stay tuned. Don't go away. Stay tuned to DD.
India's friend. Namaste, Trump. Namaste, Trump.
Namaste. Namaste.
Namaste, Trump.
Namaste. Namaste.
Welcome back. You're watching our special broadcast, Namaste Trump. Today is day 2 of US President Donald Trump's visit. We are in the thick of all the formal engagements that are taking place as we speak at the Hyderabad House. You must have heard both the leaders, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump, speak give opening remarks of their restricted level talks, and now the delegation level talks are underway, and shortly we expect signing of agreements, exchange of agreements, as well as presentations by the two leaders. We'll keep you up to speed with all the developments as they pan out. Remember, DD India is the place to be today because we are on top of all the developments.
Exist in curriculum, in the leadership of the teachers, and in the spirit of enthusiasm of the students. A short while ago, I visited a classroom and observed its happiness curriculum. It is very inspiring to me that the students here begin each day by participating mindfulness. From mindful breathing, telling a story to a friend, listening to a classmate, or simply connecting with nature, of a better way for all of us to start our day. I also visited one of your primary school reading classrooms and learned about the reading program. Encouraging students to explore books of their own interest is very effective and increases reading habits and life skills. Back home in the United States, I work with children like you to promote similar ideas of well-being through my Be Best initiative. The 3 pillars of Be Best include the dangers of drug abuse, the importance of online safety, and the overall well-being of children. It is my hope that by talking about the values of Be Best with young people in the United States and around the world, our children, teachers, and parents will strive to share them with family and friends throughout their own communities. As I travel around the world, I'm inspired not only by programs like the reading classroom and the happiness curriculum, but also by the people who dedicated themselves to helping children overcome the many issues they face each day. Seeing your programs firsthand and hearing from your dedicated educators has been a great experience and prove that the principles of Be Best are not just limited to the United States, but can be found throughout the world. This school exemplifies that promoting values of kindness, compassion, and respect can bring about positive change within your communities. Before I leave today, I want to thank all of the educators here who are setting positive examples for young people and providing them with the skills and knowledge they will need as they grow and develop. Students, I want to thank you for welcoming me to your school. I encourage you to keep working hard every day and want to let you know that what you are learning is valuable and will make a difference in your lives and those around you. As you continue on your path of learning, always remember to be good to each other. And principals and teachers, thank you for what you do to promote healthy and positive examples for our young people in order to provide them with a promising future. Thank you.
So you saw United States First Lady Melania Trump speak at the Sarvodaya School in Nanakpura, Delhi in Moti Bagh area, and she spoke about her experience watching children during a happiness class at a government school. She also said that she attended a reading program also of a primary class, and she spoke about the importance of values, and she urged children to be good to each other, to become good citizens. She spoke about the importance of values as these children grow up, and she said that are encouraged to keep working hard every day. She said she learned about the reading program at the primary school, and she said it's quite inspiring to see students at the happiness class connecting with nature and being mindful at the same time. This is an interaction that you can see of floaters, the First Lady of the United States of America, Melania Trump, with students, the beautiful art.
పెద్దవంక బ్రహ్మదేవుని చేన్లు కొత్త చెరువు తవ్వించాలని చెప్పి ప్రణాళిక తయారు చేసుకోవడం అది అయిపోయింది. కనకరాచమ్మ దేవాలయం వద్ద కొత్తగా చెక్ డ్యాం నిర్మించుకున్నాం. గంగొంది వద్ద పెద్ద పాలేరు నుండి కాలువ తవ్వి చెన్నమ్మ చెరువు వైపు సప్లై ఛానల్ ఇచ్చి దీనికి కూడా 30 కోట్ల రూపాయలు శాంక్షన్ చేశాం. ఇది అయిపోయింటే నేరుగా చెన్నమ్మ చెరువు కూడా నీళ్ళెళ్ళి ఇవన్నీ కూడా అనుసంధానం చేస్తుంటే కంగొంది మొత్తం ఎన్ని చెరువులు ఉన్నాయో అన్ని చెరువులకు నీళ్లు ఇచ్చి పాలారులో కూడా చెక్ డ్యాములు
have flowed from global north to global south, and we have been inspired by the American, example of their universities, and we have tried to emulate that here, because they do lead in higher education. But elementary, primary and secondary level schooling, we do have a lot of deficiencies in our country, and we are still a developing country. But it seems like there are some innovations that that the Americans could emulate from us, and it's very modest on the part of First Lady of the United States to think about how our curricular innovations could then be adopted back in the US, because it's a two-way transfer. And India is no longer that kind of what used to be called a third world country, where we are begging for aid from Western world to improve our school system or any such thing. We have now resources of our own. We've got capable governments, and we are now trying to revamp. We have a national education policy that Prime Minister has endorsed, and we hope that our standards will rise. We have ambitions of breaking in the top 200 of the world in terms of global university rankings, but our school system needs to be strengthened further. So technology, the one you mentioned, Munmun, Melania Trump's presence might help boost these kind of online based learning modules that can be shared. Already Khan Academy and such things, which are US manufactured educational services and which are free of cost, have been huge hits in India. So through massive open online courses, MOOCs as they're called, these are means by which tele-education through digital means, this is what we would like, so it should be a two-way transfer. If they adopt some of our ideas and change their curriculum and tweak it, very good. By the way, the Americans are quite envious of our Indian students ability in math and science. Usually there's been a decline in math and science education in the US system, and they've been lamenting that they're losing the lead to Asia, especially to China, Japan, Korea and India. So I think there are some areas where despite our resource constraints we have done well, and now I think the era of aid, donor, giver and recipient and all that is over. In any way, Trump administration has been slashing most of its development aid and budget. What we are looking for is a partnership of equals based on respect for each other's comparative advantages in education, and how we can then use these complementarities to build the capacities and skill levels of our youth on both sides. So I would hope that some of our good schools also train American youth just as much as we want vice versa.
Right, Professor, just to bring our viewers up to speed with the visuals coming in from Hyderabad House as we speak. But before we resume our discussion, let's first take a quick look at what Prime Minister Modi and US President Donald Trump said during the delegation level talks. Now, Prime Minister Modi and US President Donald Trump today held restricted and delegation level talks in New Delhi. The US President is leading a high-level 12-member delegation which includes Commerce Secretary, Energy Secretary, Acting Chief of Staff and National Security Advisor.
मुझे खुशी है कि आप परिवार के साथ भी आए, और मैं जानता हूं कि इन दिनों अमेरिका में आपकी इतनी व्यस्तता है, लेकिन उसके बावजूद भी आपने भारत का निमंत्रण स्वीकार किया। मैं आपका बहुत बहुत आभारी हूं। आपका और आपके पूरे डेलीगेशन का मैं हृदय से बहुत बहुत स्वागत करता हूं।
And for his part, US President Donald Trump mentioned his delight at getting such a warm welcome in India.
Progress we've made and on trade, on fighter jets, on commercial airlines and various other things, and energy. We're working on some very, very substantial transactions, and I think it's going very well. When you look at what we did yesterday, filling up that stadium, and they had thousands of people outside trying to get in, that was a great honor for me and a great honor for you. They were there for you. I would even imagine they were there for you more than for me. I hope so anyway. That the people love you. When I spoke of you, and I speak with great fondness, the people stood up yesterday and they cheered. You had 125,000 people, I guess, inside, and you had many people on the lawns. And every time I mentioned your name, they would cheer. So they love you in India, and that's a good thing.
And in fact, another guest has joined us. Dr. Bhaskar Balakrishnan, a former diplomat, is with us. Dr. Balakrishnan, we were earlier showing our viewers visuals from the Hyderabad House, and this time the joint press statement is going to be delivered from the lawns of the Hyderabad House. It's a different environment, isn't it? One can breathe easy there, it seems. Your thoughts, I mean, I don't know whether you've seen this, but this is how it looks. And at the Hyderabad House lawns, so we are looking at various cabinet ministers. There's Dharmendra Pradhan, there's Piyush Goyal as well, and now we are all waiting for that joint press statement to be read out.
Yes, it's certainly a very picturesque setting, and taking advantage of good weather to have the joint statement delivered in that environment. And of course, there's a lot of expectation of what is going to be in that joint statement. On both sides. I think the sectors of defense, energy and aerospace are the very hot sectors. We can expect win-win deals in all these sectors, and that will also help to balance the trade to some extent, merchandise trade. So we'll have to see what comes out of it. On the strategic side, there are commonalities, and of course there is the background of the Afghanistan developments in Afghanistan, which for which the Americans are very much interested in reducing their military presence, boots on the ground, and restoring peace to that country. But there are a lot of difficulties along that road.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's a matter of concern to India as well, because we don't want Afghanistan to become a hotbed of terrorism and support to Al-Qaeda and ISIS once again. It's also a threat to the whole of Central Asia and also to China, if that happens.
Indeed. If I can bring you in, Professor, as Ambassador Balakrishnan mentioned, the India-US ties is one of global strategic partnerships where expectedly regional issues can be expected to figure in their discussion as well as in the joint press statement and the joint statement itself, issues such as Afghanistan and the Indo-Pacific. Your thoughts on the big takeaways from that perspective?
Yes, Ramesh, when we say this is a strategic partnership, the implication is that two countries are coming together to have an impact on third or fourth or fifth countries.
Right.
Otherwise, it's purely a bilateral thing. It doesn't affect the rest of the world. And the Prime Minister was very clear, in his remarks yesterday in Motera in Ahmedabad, where he said that हम long term vision के साथ चलते हैं बजाय short term goals के.
Right.
And that is a very clear indication. This is what India wants. I mean, the problem with Trump has been that he has looked at shorter term gains because he's got an election coming up.
So
and
he's looking at the next decade,
yeah,
so to speak.
Yeah. So we have actually a longer term vision on this. And we are treating this visit as part of a chain of events that starting from Bill Clinton in 2000. So I think we are in a way a very steady and stable and predictable partner here. Trump brought in a lot of unpredictability, but I think this visit hopefully should get him on board, because the bureaucracies of the two sides are very clear that this is a pivotal relationship for the balance of power in Asia, for stabilizing Afghanistan,
And
And there you
Professor,
are
we're
seeing-
getting the first visuals of the two leaders, Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, walk out of Hyderabad House for the signing of agreement ceremony, followed by their joint press statement. These are live visuals coming to viewers from the Hyderabad House in New Delhi.
History is going to be made, just like Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, and this is going to be a new chapter in India-US strategic partnership.
Your Excellency, Mr. Donald Trump, President of the United States of America, Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Before I begin with the press event, I would like to announce the 3 documents which were concluded during the visit. First was an MOU on mental health between the Department of Health and Family Welfare of the Government of the Republic of India and the Department of Health and Human Services of the Government of the United States of America. Second was an MOU on the safety of medical products between the Central Drugs Standard Control Organization within the Directorate General of Health Services of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare of the Republic of India and the Food and Drug Administration of the Department of Health and Human Services of the United States of America. And finally, a letter of cooperation between Indian Oil Corporation Limited and ExxonMobil India LNG Limited and Chart Industries Incorporation. I now begin the proceedings for the press event. To begin, may I request the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, to deliver his statement to the press.
मेरे मित्र
My friend
और अमेरिका के राष्ट्रपति
and President of the United States,
Donald Trump,
Donald Trump,
अमेरिकी डेलीगेशन के सम्मानित
respected
सदस्यगण,
members of the American delegation,
लेडीज एंड जेंटलमैन,
ladies and gentlemen,
नमस्ते।
good afternoon.
राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप और उनके डेलीगेशन का भारत में एक बार फिर
A very warm
हार्दिक
welcome
स्वागत
to
है।
President Trump and his delegation
मुझे
in
विशेष
India.
खुशी है
I am especially
कि इस यात्रा
really
पर
happy
वो अपने परिवार के साथ आए
his
हैं।
family with him on this visit.
पिछले 8 महीनों में
In the
राष्ट्रपति
last 8
ट्रंप
months,
और मेरे बीच
this is
ये 5वीं मुलाकात है।
meeting between President Trump and
कल
myself.
मोटेरा में
Yesterday,
राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप का अनप्रेसिडेंटेड
unprecedented
और हिस्टोरिकल वेलकम
historic welcome for President Trump
हमेशा
yesterday in
याद
Montreal
रखा
will
जाएगा।
always be remembered.
कल
Yesterday,
ये फिर से स्पष्ट हुआ
it became clear once
कि
again
अमेरिका और भारत के संबंध
the relations between the United
सिर्फ
States
दो
and
सरकारों
India
के बीच नहीं है,
are not just limited
बल्कि
to the relations between
पीपल
two
ड्रिवन है,
They are people
पीपल
driven
सेंट्रिक है।
and they are people centric.
यह संबंध
This relationship
21वीं सदी की सबसे महत्वपूर्ण पार्टनरशिप में है
partnership of the 21st century
और इसलिए
and therefore
आज
today
राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप
President Trump
और मैंने
I have taken it
हमारे संबंधों को
to raise
कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव ग्लोबल स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप
of a comprehensive global
के स्तर पर ले जाने का
partnership.
निर्णय लिया है। संबंधों को इस मुकाम तक लाने में
President
राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप का
contribution in
अमूल्य योगदान रहा है।
relations to this level
Friends,
have been invaluable.
आज
Friends,
हमारी चर्चा में हमने
during our discussions today,
इस पार्टनरशिप के
we had
हर अहम पहलू
a
पर
productive exchange
सकारात्मक
on
विचार
every
किया,
important aspect of our partnership.
चाहे वो डिफेंस
Whether it is defense
एंड सिक्योरिटी हो,
security,
एनर्जी स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप हो,
strategic energy
टेक्नोलॉजी
partnership,
कोऑपरेशन हो,
technology cooperation,
ग्लोबल कनेक्टिविटी हो,
global connectivity,
ट्रेड रिलेशंस हो
trade relations,
या फिर पीपल टू पीपल
or
टाइज,
people-to-people ties.
भारत और अमेरिका के बीच बढ़ता रक्षा और सुरक्षा सहयोग
Defense and security
हमारी
cooperation
स्ट्रेटेजिक
between
पार्टनरशिप का
India and the United
एक
States
बहुत
is
अहम
a very
हिस्सा है।
important aspect
अत्याधुनिक रक्षा उपकरण व प्लेटफॉर्म पर सहयोग से भारत की डिफेंस क्षमता में बढ़ोतरी हुई है। हमारे डिफेंस मैन्युफैक्चरर्स एक दूसरे की सप्लाई चेन्स का हिस्सा बन रहे हैं। भारतीय फोर्सेस आज सबसे अधिक ट्रेनिंग एक्सरसाइज यूएसए के फोर्सेस के साथ कर रही है। पिछले कुछ सालों में हमारी सेनाओं के बीच इंटर ऑपरेबिलिटी में अनप्रेसिडेंटेड वृद्धि हुई है। फ्रेंड्स, इसी तरह हम अपने होमलैंड्स की सुरक्षा और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय अपराध से लड़ने के लिए भी सहयोग बढ़ा रहे हैं। आज होमलैंड सिक्योरिटी पर हुए निर्णय से इस सहयोग को और बल मिलेगा। आतंक के समर्थकों को जिम्मेदार ठहराने के लिए आज हमने अपने प्रयासों को और बढ़ाने का निश्चय किया है। प्रेसिडेंट ट्रंप ने ड्रग्स और ओपियोइड क्राइसिस से लड़ाई को प्राथमिकता दी है। आज हमारे बीच ड्रग ट्रैफिकिंग, नार्को टेररिज्म और ऑर्गेनाइज क्राइम जैसी गंभीर समस्याओं के बारे में एक नए मैकेनिज्म पर भी सहमति हुई है। फ्रेंड्स, कुछ ही समय पहले स्थापित हमारी स्ट्रेटेजिक एनर्जी पार्टनरशिप सुदृढ़ होती जा रही है और इस क्षेत्र में आपसी निवेश बढ़ा है। तेल और गैस के लिए अमेरिका भारत का एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण स्रोत बन गया है। पिछले 4 वर्षों में हमारा कुल एनर्जी व्यापार करीब $20 बिलियन रहा है। रिन्यूएबल हो या न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी, हमारे कोऑपरेशन को नई ऊर्जा मिल रही है। फ्रेंड्स, इसी तरह इंडस्ट्री 4.0 और 21st सेंचुरी की अन्य उभरती टेक्नोलॉजी, उस पर भी इंडिया यूएस पार्टनरशिप इनोवेशन और एंटरप्राइज के नए मुकाम स्थापित कर रही है। भारतीय प्रोफेशनल्स के टैलेंट ने अमेरिकी कंपनीज की टेक्नोलॉजी लीडरशिप को मजबूत किया है। फ्रेंड्स, भारत और अमेरिका आर्थिक क्षेत्र में ओपननेस और फेयर एंड बैलेंस ट्रेड के लिए प्रतिबद्ध है। पिछले 3 वर्षों में हमारे द्विपक्षीय व्यापार में डबल डिजिट ग्रोथ हुई है और वह ज्यादा संतुलित भी हुआ है। अगर एनर्जी, सिविल एयरक्राफ्ट, डिफेंस और हायर एजुकेशन ले तो पिछले 4-5 सालों में सिर्फ इन 4 सेक्टर्स ने ही भारत अमेरिका के आर्थिक संबंधों में लगभग $70 बिलियन का योगदान किया है। इसमें से काफी कुछ राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप की नीतियों और फैसलों के कारण संभव हुआ है। मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि आने वाले समय में यह आंकड़ा काफी बढ़ जाएगा। जहां तक बायलैटरल ट्रेड का सवाल है, हमारे कॉमर्स मिनिस्टर्स के बीच सकारात्मक वार्ताएं हुई हैं। राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप और मैं आज सहमत हुए हैं कि हमारे कॉमर्स मिनिस्टर के बीच जो अंडरस्टैंडिंग बनी है उसे हमारी टीम्स लीगल रूप दें। हम एक बड़ी ट्रेड डील के लिए नेगोशिएशन शुरू करने पर भी सहमत हुए हैं। हमें आशा है कि आपसी हित में इसके अच्छे परिणाम निकलेंगे। फ्रेंड्स, वैश्विक स्तर पर भारत और अमेरिका का सहयोग हमारे समान लोकतांत्रिक मूल्यों और उद्देश्यों पर आधारित है। खासकर इंडो पैसिफिक और ग्लोबल कॉमन्स में रूल बेस्ड इंटरनेशनल ऑर्डर के लिए यह सहयोग विशेष महत्व रखता है। हम दोनों देश विश्व में कनेक्टिविटी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के विकास में सस्टेनेबल एंड ट्रांसपेरेंट फाइनेंसिंग के महत्व पर सहमत है। हमारा यह आपसी तालमेल एक दूसरे के ही नहीं बल्कि विश्व के हित में है। फ्रेंड्स, भारत और अमेरिका की स्पेशल मित्रता की सबसे महत्वपूर्ण नींव हमारे पीपल टू पीपल रिलेशंस हैं, चाहे वो प्रोफेशनल्स हो या स्टूडेंट्स। यूएसए में इंडियन डायस्पोरा का इसमें सबसे बड़ा योगदान रहा है। भारत के ये एम्बेसडर्स न सिर्फ अपने टैलेंट और परिश्रम से यूएसए की अर्थव्यवस्था में कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहे हैं, बल्कि अपने डेमोक्रेटिक वैल्यूज और समृद्ध कल्चर से अमेरिकन सोसाइटी को भी एनरिच कर रहे हैं। मैंने राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप से अनुरोध किया है कि हमारे प्रोफेशनल्स के सोशल सिक्योरिटी कंट्रीब्यूशन पर टोटलाइजेशन एग्रीमेंट को दोनों पक्ष चर्चा आगे बढ़ाएं। यह आपसी हित में होगा। फ्रेंड्स, इन सभी आयामों में हमारे रिश्तों को और मजबूत बनाने में राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप की ये यात्रा ने ऐतिहासिक भूमिका निभाई है। एक बार फिर मैं प्रेसिडेंट ट्रंप को भारत आने के लिए और भारत अमेरिका संबंधों को नई ऊंचाई पर पहुंचाने के लिए हार्दिक धन्यवाद देता हूं। थैंक यू।
Well, thank you very much. And Prime Minister Modi, this has been a very special visit. Unforgettable, extraordinary. What can you say? Very, very wonderful to be with you. Thank you very much. And Melania and I have been awed by the majesty of India and the exceptional kindness and generosity of the Indian people. We'll always remember the magnificent welcome the citizens of your home state showed us upon arrival. It was a profound expression of strength and of real love. Really, it was love. And I think everybody saw that, everybody witnessed that for themselves. The First Lady and I also reflected on the memory of Mahatma Gandhi at his ashram, and this morning in Delhi, we laid a wreath in his honor. We visited one of your nation's most stunning cultural treasures, the world-famous Taj Mahal, and we look forward to continuing our visit tonight during a wonderful state banquet with President Kovind at the Presidential Palace. I know Prime Minister Modi will agree that this has been a very productive visit for both of our countries. Earlier today, we expanded our defense cooperation with agreements for India to purchase more than $3 billion of advanced American military equipment, including Apache and MH-60 Romeo helicopters, the finest in the world. These deals will enhance our joint defense capabilities as our militaries continue to train and operate side by side. In our discussions, Prime Minister Modi and I affirmed our two countries' commitment to protecting our citizens from radical Islamic terrorism. In this effort, the United States is also working productively with Pakistan to confront terrorists who operate on its soil. Together, the Prime Minister and I are revitalizing the Quad initiative with the United States, India, Australia, and Japan. Since I took office, we have held the first Quad ministerial meeting. I guess you would call it a meeting, but it seems like so much more than that, an expanded cooperation on counterterrorism, cybersecurity, and maritime security to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific. As we deepen our partnership with India, we remember that our two countries have always been united by shared traditions of democracy and constitutions that protect freedom, individual rights, and the rule of law. During our visit, we discussed the importance of a secure 5G wireless network and the need for this emerging technology to be a tool for freedom, progress, prosperity, not to do anything where it could be even conceived as a conduit for suppression and censorship. To guarantee that the infrastructure of the future is built in a safe, transparent, and accountable manner, the United States is working with a range of partners, including Australia and Japan, to create the Blue Dot Network, a major initiative to ensure countries around the world to have access to private sector-led, sustainable, and trustworthy options for high-quality infrastructure development, and that's what's happening. Another major focus of my discussions with Prime Minister Modi is forging bilateral economic relationships that is fair and reciprocal. Our teams have made tremendous progress on a comprehensive trade agreement, and I'm optimistic we can reach a deal that will be of great importance to both countries. Since I took office, U.S. exports to India are up nearly 60%, and exports of high-quality American energy have grown by, thank you very much, 500%. That's great. As India grows, so do its energy needs. Yesterday, ExxonMobil signed a deal to improve India's natural gas distribution network so that the U.S. can export even more LNG to India. We are pleased to be joined by the chairman of ExxonMobil LNG Market Development, Alex Volkov. Thank you, Alex, wherever you may be. Where is Alex? Is here someplace? Alex, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alex. And the CEO of Chart Energy and Chemicals, Jillian Ivanko. Thank you very much. Thank you both. Thank you, Jillian. Thank you very much. That's a big deal, Alex, right? Can you handle it? I think so, right? It's great. To further strengthen our economic ties, the United States is pleased to announce that the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation will be establishing a permanent presence right here. America is especially committed to working with India to improve development and empower women entrepreneurs. That is why my daughter Ivanka attended the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in Hyderabad to highlight women's economic empowerment. Ivanka, please, great job you've done. Thank you very much. Thank you. We have since launched the WGDP initiative, which is now spearheading projects supporting women in the economy from New Delhi to Kolkata. In our meetings with the Prime Minister, we discussed and agreed to create a counter-narcotics working group to confront the growing threat of illicit fentanyl and opioid production. We must rid our societies of these lethal, horrible poisons. We will rid our societies of these bad drugs that are pouring in. Prime Minister Modi, we have made tremendous advances for our people over the past 2 days, and working together, I know that our two nations will continue to achieve new breakthroughs, unlock new potential, and forge even brighter futures in the years ahead. We think we're at a point where our relationship is so special with India. It has never been as good as it is right now, and I think that's because the two leaders of each country, really, we feel very strongly about each other, and we have done something that's very unique, and we've made some wonderful deals for each of our countries. Once again, we want to thank you and the entire nation of India for honoring the United States with its outstanding welcome, and I'm pleased to say that the U.S.-Indian partnership is now truly stronger than ever before. This was a great visit with a tremendous friend and a tremendous leader, Prime Minister Modi. We won't be taking questions now. I'll be having a news conference at 5 o'clock, and we'll take plenty of questions. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. This concludes the press event. Thank you all for joining.
So 3 MOUs have been announced ahead of the joint press statement. One is on mental health, the second being on safety of medical products in the food and drugs domain, and the third being one in terms of energy cooperation, a letter of cooperation between IOC and ExxonMobil. And a big announcement has been made. Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced that India and the United States have decided to upgrade their relationship to a comprehensive global strategic partnership, which means that this strategic partnership is now going to have even more heft. Besides that, Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke about how not just bilateral trade has grown between India and the United States by leaps and bounds, but how that trade has become more balanced with elements like energy, defense, higher education, as well as civil aircraft. Later, Donald Trump also spoke about how exports from the United States to India have gone up by leaps and bounds, especially since he became the President of the United States of America. A new mechanism has been announced on drug trafficking, narco-terrorism, as well as on organized crime. And a mention was made by US President Donald Trump of terrorism emanating from Pakistan and the need to put a check on that. Besides that, Donald Trump mentioned that the first quadrilateral ministerial meeting had taken place. There was a mention of Blue Dot Network as well by US President Donald Trump, and the need to have sustainable financing was something that Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke about. So this particular initiative also was discussed. Also, Indo-Pacific was one issue that was discussed in the context of the first Quad ministerial meeting that Donald Trump spoke about. So a huge array of issues were discussed during this meeting, and very importantly, considering the issue of movement of professionals from India to the United States, it has also been requested by Prime Minister Narendra Modi that talks should move forward on a totalization agreement for social security. In the context of bilateral trade, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that the commerce ministers of India and the United States have already met, and we've agreed to have an understanding that moves on to a legal route. He said that we've agreed to start talks on a major trade deal that is mutually beneficial. So those are the highlights of the press statements. And later we heard US President Donald Trump say that he'll be addressing a joint press conference. In fact, a press conference. He'll be addressing a press conference at around 5 this evening.
Indeed. And Munmun, if I can just talk about what President Trump said in his intervention there in the joint press statement alongside Prime Minister Modi. President Trump spoke about a $3 billion defense deal with India. That's point number one. He spoke about how the U.S. wants Pakistan to confront terrorism operating from its soil. He spoke about how the Quad, comprising India, US, Japan and Australia, had been revived in the Indo-Pacific region. He spoke about 5G, saying that it should not become a conduit for suppression, and said that India, Japan and the US are collaborating on the Blue Dot initiative as a counter to China's Belt and Road initiative. All right, we have three very special guests in the studio to walk us through the main takeaways from the joint press statements by President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. If I can start from my extreme left, Ambassador Manjeev Puri, who is just demitted office as India's ambassador to Nepal. We have Ambassador Bhaskar Balakrishnan and Professor Sriram Chaulia, who will talk to us about the outcomes of the India-US talks that just concluded in New Delhi. If I can start with you, Ambassador Puri, your sense of the big takeaways from that joint press statement that we just heard from President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. In your estimation, what are the highlights of those two statements there?
Thank you. I think there are a number of highlights, but let me underscore what to me is the critical aspect, which is the upgrading of the status of the bilateral relationship. Look, let's clearly understand that the two prime ministers having met so many times, and these two bilateral interactions taking place literally back to back in the last few months, and that too in this large scale, has underscored, in my opinion, one central point, that India has started counting as far as the United States calculus is concerned. Therefore, as we are upgraded to a much higher level of a bilateral relationship, all other elements will fall in place. I'll leave it at that. I'm sure the others would contribute. Sure. But obviously, security relationships are extremely important, and geopolitics also plays its role in it.
Indeed. Ambassador Balakrishnan, would you want to weigh in on your take on the joint press statements?
Yes, I think there has been a problem with the trade imbalance with the US. That has slowly moved towards a more balanced position over the years, as US has become a major energy exporter. And that is an area where India needs oil and gas.
Right.
So that is automatically helping to balance the trade. At the same time, we are diversifying away from dependence on Russia and moving towards more military purchases from the US. So US defense, the helicopters were mentioned, Apache helicopters and Seahawk helicopters. So those are very urgently needed for our Navy, 36 helicopters. So that is again area of defense purchases. And Prime Minister mentioned that the companies on both sides, their value chains are getting intermeshed. Of course, the US has to do some work. They have a very nightmarish complex of export controls in dual use products. So they have to do their homework in simplifying the export control systems and making it easier for people to import their defense related products. But overall, I think the progress has been good, and I think the future also we can expect defense and energy related purchases from India to grow, and then of course that would help to balance the trade and relieve some of the pressure coming from the US towards balanced trade in goods. On the services side, if you take higher education services into account, that trade is balanced, and the US higher education system offers a very great advantages for our Indian higher educational institutions who are seeking to move up the ladder of global excellence. So if they seize the opportunity of working constructively with the US higher education sector, I think we can have a win-win situation there.
Okay, your thoughts on the biggest takeaways?
Munmun, definitely comprehensive global strategic partnership means a lot. In fact, except Japan, no country has ever been designated that way by India. So this means that there is an expectation, especially on, I think, more on our side, that the Americans will help us to create a balance of power in Asia. And emphasized one point, it's worth noting, which is about the military exercise, and he said the interoperability of the two militaries is unprecedented. That's the word, the English word he used, Prime Minister Modi. And President Trump also mentioned our two militaries are operating more and more side by side. That's what he said. And what caught my attention was, Trump's mention of the revitalization of the Quad, which involves India, Japan, US and Australia, and free and open Indo-Pacific. And Prime Minister mentioned global commons. This is basically a reference to the open seas, the high seas, which are not under the control of any single country or part of any maritime domain of any individual country. That is where the contest is, for geopolitical balance in the 21st century, and where we expect some support, because we on our own cannot reduce the imprint of the Chinese power in this region, and we look for allies or partners. Rules-based international order. That's the other thing that caught my mind. Prime Minister was very clear about it. And here it's again a clear geopolitical construct. When we say that, we mean that there should be no blockage of the crucial waterways, of the choke points that are so significant, especially in our area, in our region, in the Indo-Pacific is the Straits of Malacca and such places where the Chinese Navy has been expanding. So I think we are very clear about our strategic goals. Frankly, we have put the ball in the US court, and we have extracted all that we wanted, in this statement, because essentially we are saying that we are holding firm on our trade points, and we are not yet ready for a final deal because the Americans are not ready. But on other issues, especially military, it's tremendous. And I also wanted to add the one on counter-terrorism. Prime Minister said we agreed to hold terrorists accountable. And that is a significant. I would hope that maybe this means that there's some kind of a new effort at legal, proceedings, for example, that could be taken up in US courts or in international bodies that can further add to pressure and shaming of this rogue state to our west, and which has been promoting, terrorism left, right, and center. So there are, of course, also military and counterintelligence means by which we would like to target these terrorists. The homeland security, Munmun, that was mentioned by Prime Minister, that this is an area on which we are agreeing and we are going to sign. So I think these are areas which involve border protection, coastal, protection, maritime. So apart from the others, as pointed out by co-panelists, I think the geopolitical direction is looking clearer now, because when Trump came into power, there were lots of questions, and even now, for that matter, the Quad, he said we have revitalized. He said, ministerial sounds like a small thing, but now we have ramped it up to a different level. But with Trump, the question is, will he go beyond bilaterals? Can he build together a coalition, which we expected until Obama was there? That is a big test, So I think we are going to hold this document. The beauty of these diplomatic, products is that this is going to become part of the history and part of the working relationship with the US going forward, and we will have mechanisms and sub-mechanisms and lower level procedures to, carry the agenda forward. The vision that's been set out today needs a lot of follow-up work.
Ambassador Puri, you've served in Nepal, and Nepal, like some of India's other neighbors, have signed up to China's Belt and Road Initiative. There are concerns in New Delhi on that count. If I can quote what Prime Minister Modi said, he spoke about Indo-Pacific as a global commons, a rules-based order. He spoke about connectivity and says that India is for sustainable and transparent financing of these infrastructure projects to counter China's BRI. And President Trump himself spoke about the Blue Dot initiative comprising India, Japan, and the US. So your thoughts on the way forward on this count, India-US cooperation, to have a more robust cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region to take on China's BRI project?
So let me first say something else, something in continuation of your previous question, and the focus remaining on bilaterals, India and the United States. Look, I think one of the great takeaways of this visit and these repeat meetings at the highest level, and let's remember, the United States is a presidential form of government. The president really counts for a lot of things. We, I think, are building bridges to be able to do two things. One, in the United States, which is a hegemonic power and which acts domestically, including internationally, we are trying to build some space to be able to get some leeway, some concessions, some buyouts for India. That's extremely important for us, the way we are. Secondly, there are a lot of concerns that we have which involve movement of people, movements of things. So if I may use an expression, which perhaps has not been used in too many places, India versus Indians. These kind of relationships allow you to move forward on those kind of issues which are germane to yourself, India's growth story, India's development story. Now let me come to you on our neighborhood. Look, the entire neighborhood is looking at this visit. They have always looked at these visits. If I may just point out, every single Pakistani newspaper headlined a small thing which was actually mentioned in the different context that they are a problem and that we need to get them in. Others may think of it differently.
In honor of India's father of the nation, the man who was the architect of India's independence that India finally got on 15th August 1947. And we're also standing by for him to plant a tree, just like his predecessor, former US President Dwight Eisenhower had done, and several other dignitaries that came here from the world over did, including Queen Elizabeth II, former Australian Prime Minister Ho Chi Minh, and many others. Rajghat is a memorial to Mahatma Gandhi. There was the Rajghat Gate of the World City opening at Rajghat on the Yamuna. Eventually, the memorial area was also called Rajghat. It was here where Gandhi's last rites were performed on the 31st of January 1948, one day after his death. The memorial to Mahatma Gandhi is located between Ring Road and the banks of the Yamuna River towards the southeast of the Red Fort. To give you an idea of the location, this is 4 kilometers away from Rajpath. A black marble platform marks the spot of Mahatma Gandhi's cremation. A wreath is being brought. Gandhi's last words, "Hey Ram," are inscribed on the marble which is adorned with flowers. The memorial has been designed in such a manner that it reflects the simplicity of Mahatma Gandhi's life, because he was a man who was extremely comfortable in the most basic of clothing. He wore a simple dhoti, and that was symbolic of the rules of simplicity that he lived by. Mahatma Gandhi is an epitome of simplicity, and on such an occasion one is reminded of the principles of Mahatma Gandhi as well, of peace and ahimsa, which is non-violence, of maintaining the lowest carbon footprint possible, because Mahatma Gandhi's life was one of the lowest carbon footprint. And you are seeing US President Donald Trump and First Lady of the United States of America, Melania Trump, standing and paying respects to Mahatma Gandhi after having laid a wreath. This stop is extremely important in terms of the emotional relationship that India and the United States share. In terms of symbolism, this stop is extremely significant. Foreign dignitaries make it a point to come to Rajghat to pay respects to Mahatma Gandhi. US President Donald Trump had gone to Sabarmati Ashram in Gandhinagar, paying tributes to the Mahatma, trying his hand at the charkha. He mentioned at the Motera Stadium speech yesterday that he will be coming to Rajghat, laying a wreath, and also be planting a tree in memory of Mahatma Gandhi. 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi is being globally commemorated. In fact, the United Nations also paid tribute to Mahatma Gandhi with solar panels installed on its roof. That was inaugurated in September last, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was there to attend the last session of the United Nations General Assembly. So Mahatma Gandhi forms a strong bond between India and the United States, and between India and several countries. He is a man who is revered the world over for the principles that he lived by, for having ensured India's independence without the use of violence. One is reminded of the principles of Mahatma Gandhi on such an occasion. So the wreath has been laid by the Trumps, and now we expect the tree planting exercise also to take place. Dwight Eisenhower had planted a tree, just like Queen Elizabeth II, former Australian Prime Minister Gough Whitman, Ho Chi Minh, and several other dignitaries have. This is the wreath that was laid by the Trumps at Rajghat. And now we are standing by for the tree planting exercise. So that was a tribute to Mahatma Gandhi by the Trumps, and we continue to be joined by Professor Vijay Lakshmi. Professor Vijay Lakshmi, your word on the way the whole world is commemorating 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. At the UNGA, we saw how several solar plants, in fact 123 of them, symbolizing the several member states of the UN, were inaugurated on the rooftop of the United Nations headquarters. Your thoughts on the way he is revered the world over?
Well, I think it speaks for India's emergence on the world scene in such a non-violent and principled way. It takes the heartbeat of India of today, but it connects it to India's birth, you know. And the relevance of Mahatma Gandhiji on a world stage is also indicative of the kind of heroes that we are looking for today. In a troubled world, the words of peace are alone not enough. The means towards achieving peace have begun to capture the imagination of world audiences and world governments.
Professor Vijayalakshmi will take this forward. We are now seeing how US President Donald Trump is writing in the visitor's book. He did that at the Sabarmati Ashram as well, where he thanked Prime Minister Narendra Modi for the hospitality extended to him. And now this is yet another occasion for US President Donald Trump to pen his thoughts on the Rajghat, on Mahatma Gandhi, on the kind of hospitality that he's been extended by India in the course of his first ever visit as US President to India. Melania Trump looking by as US President Donald Trump pens his thoughts at the visitor's book at Rajghat. It's a moment that touches millions of hearts in India and the world over, because Mahatma Gandhi is revered for his sacrifices, for his endless contributions to India's freedom struggle. His global stature is unrivaled. Not just India, but the world is celebrating 150th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Vaishnav Jan has been sung by musicians the world over, and that shows how Mahatma Gandhi continues to be a strong bond between India and the rest of the global community. A Gandhi Peace Garden was also inaugurated when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in New York. That was in September last, for the last UNGA. And there were several world leaders who had gathered there at New York to pay tributes to Mahatma Gandhi. A stamp was also released in honor of Mahatma Gandhi in New York. So that connect between India and the United States, which is the Gandhi Connect, is now growing stronger. United States has been visible in terms of commemorations to Mahatma Gandhi. Donald Trump continues to pen his thoughts in the diary or the visitor's book at Rajghat, a memorial to Mahatma Gandhi, where the last rites of Mahatma Gandhi were performed on the 31st of January 1948, a day after his death. That's the Rajghat, where a wreath has been laid by the Trumps, and now Melania Trump penning her thoughts as well. A solemn moment and a moment of celebration as well. A pensive moment, and you are seeing a bronze bust being gifted to US President Donald Trump and First Lady of the United States of America, Melania Trump, by Union Minister Hardeep Puri. Yesterday also at the Sabarmati Ashram, mementos were presented to the Trumps that included a statue of 3 monkeys that symbolize what Mahatma Gandhi always believed in: hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. Mahatma Gandhi lives in the hearts and minds of millions of Indians and in the hearts and minds of all in the global community. For 2 years, India and the global community are celebrating the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. the wreath laid by Donald Trump and First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump, at Rajghat, the memorial to Mahatma Gandhi. Earlier in the day, we saw how the ceremonial reception was accorded at Rashtrapati Bhavan to Donald Trump and Melania Trump. And now you're seeing how the Trumps are leaving the Rajghat premises after having paid the tributes to Mahatma Gandhi. Donald Trump had stated yesterday at Motera Stadium that he will be laying a wreath and planting a tree at Rajghat in honor of Mahatma Gandhi, who's revered all around the world. Foreign dignitaries visit India and make it a point to pay respect to Mahatma Gandhi by laying flowers or wreaths on the platform like you are seeing. This place also offers lessons on the life and philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi in the form of a Gandhi Memorial Museum, where films are shown on his life and philosophy. Remembrance ceremonies are held every Friday at Rajghat, along with prayer sessions held on Gandhi's birth anniversaries as well as death anniversaries. Gandhi's last words, "Hey Ram," are inscribed on the marble, which is always adorned with flowers. And now, US President standing by, a symbolic gesture of planting a tree, filling in sand, the Trumps, thus planting a tree in the premises of Rajghat. He joins several dignitaries by doing that, because trees labelled near the platform within the complex were planted in the past as well by various dignitaries, including his predecessor and former US President Dwight Eisenhower. There's a Gandhi Peace Garden in New York that was inaugurated when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in New York, that has the trees that symbolize the 50 different states of the United States. This is extremely important considering that Mahatma Gandhi had the lowest ever carbon footprint. His was a life full of simplicity. He adorned a simple dhoti and believed in respecting Mother Nature, not exploiting it at all. And that is why planting a tree is a mark of honor for Mahatma Gandhi. You're looking at Trump's engrossed in a conversation with Union Minister Hardeep Puri. Perhaps Donald Trump would be asking him about the history of Rajghat, the life and philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi, and the relevance of Gandhi's life and philosophy in contemporary times. The world needs the principles and values of Mahatma Gandhi today more than ever before, considering the conflict situations that have emerged in the recent past between different regions of the world, the growing challenge of extremism and terrorism. As the world unites, as India and the United States unite in the fight against radical terrorism and extremism, these principles that Mahatma Gandhi stood for, the values that he lived by, become extremely significant. Mahatma Gandhi's role in India's freedom struggle cannot be overemphasized. He led the freedom struggle that connected the whole of India, from South India to North India, Central India, Western India, Eastern India. There were several movements that Mahatma Gandhi spearheaded. He joined the Vaikom Satyagraha in Kerala that had a lot of impact on the social life in South India. Besides that, the time that he spent in Ahmedabad and Gandhinagar also shaped the Indian independence struggle. We've seen the Trumps now moving out of the Rajghat complex after laying the wreath in honor of Mahatma Gandhi and planting a tree in honor of India's father of the nation. So, Professor Vijayalakshmi, we're talking about how important Gandhian values and principles are in contemporary times.
Well, yes, but I have also mentioned earlier, Munmun, that the message that Gandhiji brings is also relevant to this generation of young people who are waking up to modern India and modern world that they live in. But in particular, the Americans, especially the civil rights movement and those who are connected with it, and those who have, in fact, the grandson of Martin Luther King visited India and had been very, very clear about how impactful Gandhiji's message was. So I think both in terms of inspiration and aspiration, a Gandhian philosophy still holds a huge message for the humanity. And it also appeals as a socially integrating force in terms of becoming, as you mentioned, simple, living with nature. And I think largely you're seeing smaller movements in the world today that are going towards organic farming, organic food, living with, not exploiting nature, using resources. A little should go a long way. All these philosophies are seemingly resonant with not just, people who sit and think about these things, but who are also young people whom you're seeing a large thing. And another thing is, because of the technology we have today and the kind of Twitter and social media that has taken over communications in such a mass and rapid way, you have these ideas also becoming again, a kind of robustness has come back into the thought processes of people in terms of accommodating Gandhian philosophy into daily life. And I think simplicity, inspiration and aspiration, all the three words describe India. It's not only India who's fascinated and continues to be inspired by Gandhiji, but I think a larger message for the world.
Absolutely, and now we are also expecting a lot of formal engagements in terms of substance and outcomes to play out at Hyderabad House once the agreements are signed and exchanged and press statements take place and a joint statement is issued.